Not across the internet. Just yeah. Anyway, sorry.
How does that sound? Is that
Nope.
Am I
still breaking up? Still breaking up.
Mickey, I think there's a glitch in my app because all the other settings work. I can change the EQ, the limiter, the compressor. They all change except for mic gain. No matter where I put the mic gain, it always jumps back to 30 dBs. And I think there's a glitch in this app. I might have to reboot or something.
Copy that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Office Hours. If you're on YouTube watching, you can actually don't put any comments over there. We're not going to look at those. So if you want to leave comments, go to Zoom, and then in Zoom you'll see a link to Makana, and then you can ask questions there. If you are here as a participant and you're looking at all these panelists, we lost a couple. Oh no, Angela's here. Okay, Angela's new. We've got a couple new folks here. Hold on. Paul King, I don't think has been here before. Paul, are you new here today? Yep. See, so we had anyway. So we love to have new people in the panel. So we just want to thank Angela and Paul for jumping in. And but if you want to do this, you can get in early. We started even earlier. We started doing meetings at 5 a.m., which I think was kind of fun. We'll talk about that in a second. And then at 6 o'clock we kind of open the webinar. Then at 6:40 is when we do the mic checks. That's when you have to actually be here. Once we start doing mic checks, if you see us checking people's mics, don't raise your digital hand because there's no. Oh, and Jeff's new here too. Hi, Jeff. So just raise your digital hand and we'll bring you in. We'd love to have you here. There's centuries of experience in this little group. So, and we love to keep on adding to it. So anyway, so if you are, once we get to 7 o'clock, we'll have general Q&A. That's all we're doing this week is general Q&A, just Thanksgiving week. We're going to take it a little easy. Usually we have second hours that are there, but it's really important to ask questions and vote on those questions. So if you go into Makana, ask the questions. The best thing to do is think about them all day. Just put them down somewhere so that you can, you remember them. And then, because you'll forget questions, you'll be like, I don't understand that. And then you'll move on to something else and it just disappears into the back, and what you want to do is just write those things down and then bring them in here and we'll chew on them a little bit and see what we can find. So anyway, so it's really the whole show is based on your questions. We will be doing our focus on education tomorrow. It's on Saturday. Now we do that every Saturday. And then Sunday is, again, just more general Q&A. And then we'll go back into second hours next week. Yeah, that's pretty much it. If you want to share this with other people, the bigger it gets, the better it gets. So we just keep on adding more knowledge to the group. So if you want to share this, I just put the link into Discord, or not in Discord, but I put the link into Makana. And anyway, so we and then Mickey would like to be the host. He always wants to be the host. All right. So anyway, we did this funny thing today before we get started with the questions. We opened up for meetings at 5 a.m. and about a bunch of people showed up. About 30 people, I think, showed up in our little experiment. And it seemed like a lot of fun. Does anyone want to share how that was for them as far as the experience of jumping in the meetings? We had a bunch of rooms. I learned that if you say people can join anytime, it means they really can join anytime. And so when I got to the meeting at like 4:45, it was like, would you like to join? I'm like, join, it's my meeting. So I'll fix that. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I've been watching my wife do this for her teaching, so I'd be very curious to ask this question tomorrow, because I think teachers would be able to give us a lot of insights of practicing this. But for me, I enjoyed it. I went straight to a particular room, and we chit and chatted, and then we automatically showed back up in the big room. So it was pretty fun.
Yeah, go ahead, Benjamin.
I'll have to say, we did the choose your own breakout room thing, and I saw the same dynamic I see in high school classrooms, which is a couple people go to their designated spaces, they congregate in a few rooms, and then a couple people kind of take a chance, they go to their own room, and then they end up rejoining others. It seems like the classic social experiment.
Yeah, very much. John, and then Jeff.
I realized I wasn't as good at Zoom as I thought I was, since I couldn't figure out how to change the meeting room. But I was enjoying the conversation of the room I was in. I just wish I'd been able to figure out how to change it, but I'll figure it out probably on Sunday.
To your point, this is why it's one of the many reasons that I tell all of our clients that you should do things over and over and over again. You shouldn't be doing one big event because everyone's trying to figure out what this looks like and how it works. And so you create all the stress around this process. Whereas when you create events over and over and over again, because we do this all the time and we're very comfortable with it. As we add meetings, within 2 or 3 of these, John, you'll be totally like, oh, this is how I do this. And this is the room I like to go into. And this is what and people will get into it. And then when you're creating content, when you're having conversations, it's about that conversation. There's not people upset because they can't figure out how it works, and I think that there's as much as training. I always talk to a lot of our clients about it's as much as training the audience as it is building the event. Is training the audience on how this is going to interact and creating opportunities for them to get comfortable with the interaction. Most of them are already interacting with Zoom, but how do you interact inside of a show, I think is different. Go ahead, Jeff. Oh, go ahead, John, before that, and then Jeff.
I was just going to say, and I'm fairly technical since I make my living at, technology. So if I'm having problems, how many other problems? But this is a safe place to make those sorts of things and admit you don't know what you're doing.
Yep.
No,
absolutely. Yep. Jeff, and then Peter.
Oh, I just wanted to share. I think I was on office hour panel one time a few months ago, and I've just kind of gotten way too comfortable watching it from the audience point of view. And this morning's early arrival certainly knocked off some of the nerves, definitely created a really nice icebreaker, getting to just have some conversation and a real natural, comfortable transition into the next hour. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, and Peter, and then TJ.
I was just going to make the truthful but fairly smart whatever comment about the fact that in my family meeting yesterday, we used breakout rooms because we had my kids with their kids, and I had my mother and my mother-in-law in another room, and we brought them all together. But the smart comment was turn it over to the 10-year-old because she could drive the meeting much more effectively than anybody.
Yeah. I was struck by yesterday. So I've been trying to get my kids to play Kingdom Rush because that's what I play. I play it on my phone, and it's like a desktop. All I play is desktop tower defense games, and I don't play them very much if I'm not on a plane, but I play them a little bit. And we got into this thing where they're sitting next to me. They've started to play. They're really good. And you realize like they're 11 and 13 now. And the two of them will sit next to me and we'll all talk about where we're putting towers and the strategy of the whole thing. And they'll say, oh, I think you need to have archers here and you have to have a mage here and you have to, and we're all like figuring this all out. But what I realized, I was like, they are really technical and they're figuring all of this out. They're explaining it and the calculations are all there. I was like, we have to figure out how to get this into school because if they put that kind of energy into school, they would be really good at math. Anyway, TJ.
It was nice being able to put some faces to some of the names we see a lot in the really chat. Fun. And A. Mitchells, saw you in there, didn't see your face, calling you out right now.
I know.
I saw 2 A. Mitchells. This is revolutionary.
It's like A. Mitchells is like the Yeti. It's a Sasquatch. Like we almost made a sighting. We saw footprints. Angela.
Yeah, it was good to feel like I got to meet you guys, I've watched you guys. I feel like I know you, but it's really great to be able to talk to you and get to know you. And most of the time I'm watching a little delayed. Like I'll turn on Mokana and pause it and then watch it in the afternoon. So I don't even get to chat as much. So it's been it's been a great morning. Thanks.
It's good to have you. Stuart.
Just on that little subject of kids pick up things faster than everyone, I'm just putting a link for everybody to have an enjoyable look at later. A group of kids who were on, I believe it was on US TV and all, where their teacher dropped out and their meeting protocol, the way they behaved, adults can learn from those kids. Just how well behaved they were because they knew it was being recorded and whatever. It's hilarious.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what will be interesting is we have a couple. Go ahead, Victor, and then we'll come back to that.
Just quickly, I think it was great that there was a safe space where new people could be brought in and they could see that it's perfectly fine, the water's fine, and now they can come and join the main panel, and we'll get even more knowledge out of in subjects that we don't even know. So brilliant, I think.
And I think that what will be kind of fun is we did meet Peter and Benjamin earlier this week or over the last week and a half. But it'd be fun for new folks at least that we haven't had introduce themselves. Just tell us what they do. Angela, what do you do?
I coordinate events. They're corporate events, anything from board meetings of 50 that we can't even be in the room and still tech from the not hearing anything, to 15,000 neurologist conferences, but it's usually around anywhere from 200 to 800. So switching to this virtual world was interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Jeff, what do you do?
I came from sales engineering in the data center equipment space for many years, but this year things changed, and so with that I took my almost 10 years of volunteer streaming at church and took that experience and applied it to what I recognized as a full-time real passion. I mean, I was still looking for work, but I was doing this and I was loving this and I wasn't loving looking for work. And so I fired up a company called Stream Sharks, and we do live event streaming and still building that business, but having a ton of fun doing it.
That's awesome. Very good. And Paul, what do you do?
Spent a lot of time in higher ed prior to branching out on my own a couple of years ago. So a lot of original production for universities, associations, and nonprofits.
Very good. And that's what you do now? You're doing your video production?
Yep.
Very good. Welcome. Cool. I think it's fun to kind of put, we've had these kind of intro big intros, but I thought it'd be kind of fun to just if we have new people, we have them. I think I think we had Benjamin, Peter, and Seth over the last week or two had shown up, and I think we've learned a little bit about them. So I think that if you come in, expect me to ask you what you do. Anyway, and then we'll get to know you just by how you participate. So it's good. All right, let's jump into some questions. What do we got building up, Bill?
Well, Benjamin is being very brave for only a 1 week or so attendee. He wants a Ruthless review. So,
all right, let's take a look here.
Let's pin Benjamin.
I was coming a little hot this morning. I think I've kind of gotten it sorted out. Somebody can back me up on that.
Keep on talking.
Okay, I'm just hanging out here, and really this Ruthless review is a little self-serving. I'm looking to improve my setup with whatever holiday gifts I may ask kindly of my family, and I was hoping to get your all advice on
that's good. That's good.
Need the most improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, generally, we will your key is actually working pretty well, but generally we'll almost always ask you to not use virtual backgrounds, or a key unless you crush it. Like if you crush it to the point where we don't notice it, then it's kind of like, sure. You still have some hard edges, on your key. So we would tend to lean, if you do that, if you do have a virtual background, we'd recommend I'd recommend blurring that background just a little bit more than you have now, because it would be more blurry if you were in there. I mean, if you had a good camera. So think about that. You always want to make sure that the background is softer than the foreground. So that's the that's the next piece of that. Also, your color, the color of your light and the color of your background don't match 100%. So it's just a matter of thinking through, and you can change the slight coloring of the background. The background's just a little warmer than, the whites are a little warmer than for you. It's really close and it looks good. It does look like you're looking up and down. So I wonder how close your webcam is to your monitor. The closer you can get that webcam to the monitor, the better, as far as, making that work. So, and then, and other comments. Go ahead, John, and then Bill.
I noticed earlier that your white balance was shifting. You're going very flat grayish to now you've got a more vivid color. This is a better look, I think. You just saw it right there. It just goes in and out. So you might want to look at locking your white balance some.
And the hard part is if you're using it, what camera are you using, Benjamin?
This is a 2017 MacBook Pro internal webcam. Here, real quick, and this is a relatively inexpensive green screen, stretched moderately well, I think. And my background's actually a live feed from a different camera outside. So you're seeing the sunrise as it's really rising.
That's great. That's fantastic. So the white balance will change. And the challenge with internal webcams on the Mac is that if you turn on anything to control them, they turn gray. You know, it's a security thing. So all the new Macs kind of take all the fun away from making any adjustment to them, which is odd. Anyway, but it sounds good. Go ahead, TJ, and then Bill.
A couple of things. If it's a little difficult if you're using a laptop, but if you can put that up like on a book or two, just get that eye line a little bit higher, just so that it's like right at your eye, because I can see you're looking down just a little bit. And then if you're using a green screen, all that green behind you is going to throw off your color balance. So that's going to really mess, because the camera is always trying to balance to a neutral color. And if you have a dramatic amount of one color or another, it's always going to affect that color balance. So if you went with a more neutral background, that would bring your color balance probably a bit closer.
Yep. Bill?
So a couple of things. First of all, I think you're doing great with most of this. One thing that I always train myself to do whenever I monitor a picture in shooting circumstances, that I try to force myself to look at all the quadrants and the halves of the picture. And in analyzing yours, the first problem that jumped out at me is the entire lower third of yours has just gone into black. I can't tell where you stop and your background starts back there. It is really just a blob, which means that your head appears to just be popping out of the upper 2/3 of your shot. And I don't find that aesthetically pleasing. I would rather see a more even background so that we see more of your shape, because then it looks like I'm talking to more of a person, less of a floating head. Also, the top part is bright, and it's almost as bright as your face. There's only a little difference between those two things. And we're all conditioned to look at the brightest object. So if you have one bright thing in the scene, also the live feed, I saw a bird fly by. Now, that's kind of cool, but it also distracted me. And suddenly I went from paying attention to you to watching the bird fly by. So it took me out of the experience of your presentation.
You know, the secret for all exterior matte shots for film is you add birds, because it tells birds and smoke. So we always did this. We always had little things flying, and you have little. If you watch any external shot that's a matte painting, you'll see birds and you'll see a little bit of smoke. Those are like the easy table. That's table stakes that you're showing something live, is that you put some birds in there. Go ahead, Paul, and then Stuart, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I actually like the bird flying by. I think it's kind of cool. How do you do that? Technically, mechanically, how are you feeding your live background in making it your virtual backdrop?
Sure. So I'm doing this all through OBS, and from the recommendations of this panel, I'm disappointed by the OBS keyer now. I used to really like it, but now you all convinced me the other way. But so it's coming in as it's a document camera I have for other purposes, but while I'm not using it as a document camera, I just point out my window and lay it in as my background.
That's great.
Behind me.
Stuart?
I'm just noticing, and now this might just simply be because it's the webcam on the Mac, but like going full screen here, I can look at like the reflections on your eyes and whatever. So you're fairly evenly lit, or appears to be that to me. But it looks like you're in the noise area of the camera signal, like it doesn't have enough light to work with. So maybe a little brighter or a better webcam would be absolutely fabulous. And if my first efforts on this panel looked that good, I wouldn't be complaining.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Courtney, last one.
And because of the wireless earphones, unless we're listening on Music Day, I'd get you some in-ear monitors so you look a little less like Princess Leia. If you don't know who that was, there was this movie a long time ago, before you were born.
a long time ago, I think, technically.
In a galaxy far away.
Yeah. So very good. This has got to be the roughest place. So kudos to you, Benjamin, to ask. This is probably the roughest place to say, "Hey, review my camera."
He specifically said Ruthless reviewed.
Yeah, that's why we call it Ruthless.
I've heard it. It's the way to do it. So then I've got to ask real quick, just follow up. would you think if I was to get a webcam, I should get, if I had the ability to get a Brio, that would be the one. That's the way to go. Yeah, and I saw one from Courtney on in-ear monitors. I respect that. I also like these headphones. And
change to a background of the Millennium Falcon, then that'll match the headphones.
Okay, great.
And I'll work on background Star Wars references will go down real.
Yeah, I'll work on background with the portholes being out my window. We'll see how that goes later.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. Like I really focus on grays a lot. If you haven't noticed, gray shirt, gray background. I do that actually because it makes your head pop out better. Like it just, like anything that you want to show in color shows better when you don't have any other color anywhere else. And so that's the calculation. It's not, I don't do it, necessarily by accident. So anyway, so that's something to think about too. All right. Next question. Good question, Benjamin.
Moving on to Abe Mitchell in Washington, who has been teased here this morning. It's curious how people congregate when faced with breakout rooms, often ending up in only one or two, no matter the number of available rooms or interests. Strangers still moving en masse from one room to another rather than splitting. Thoughts, comments, anecdotes, quibbles, foibles, and so forth.
So you'll find that I'm very, I'm a strong believer in whatever they call agile development. Is that I just have to see things and then I'll just respond to them. And so I just want to turn it on and look at the behavior, and then we'll start to triangulate that behavior into something that makes sense. I think that what we need to do is I started thinking about it, watching it, and I do agree with Grant that we probably need, like, eventually what we don't have to do it tomorrow, but eventually what we're going to need is like a room captain for each room. There's got to be somebody who says, I'm willing to take on that room every day. So that Grant's always in the something room and Mickey's always in the other room and somebody else is in some other room, like whatever that is, and it doesn't have to be every day. But that room won't exist if they're not there, kind of thing like that. And we'll figure out a schedule of what that room looks like, so that you always know that there's somebody there that, we always know that there's somebody there to kind of protect the space as well. I mean, we're all a pretty good group, but given how open we are with links and so on and so forth, we'd want to have somebody there that's kind of accountable for that room. And the other thing is that I think that there's, to Benjamin's point, it'd be good to have one that's like the room review, or my camera review or Ruthless review is like a room. So if you want to go in and have some people like pick at your space, you can just go into that room every day. And that's like a safe place for you to go in front of 5 people or 10 people and just have them pick at your look. There could be an audio, and that could be, again, an audio room. People can talk about audio. I think that the hangout room is always going to be one that's there that just I don't want to talk necessarily about geekery. I thought the geekery one was kind of fun. So we'll keep on playing with it. And just, it'll be typical for me, at least. It'll be chaotic for the first week or two, and then it'll slowly start settling, and then it'll be a whole bunch of movement, and then it'll just start to kind of get into it, and then it'll be something we do every day and we don't think about it anymore. But yeah, I think that and to Benjamin had asked earlier in it, I think that we'll probably end up doing this maybe even tomorrow. I'll see if I can set up, it won't be tomorrow, it'll be Sunday. We'll set up one afterwards just to see what it looks like. So the other thing is to bookend the show with the ability to go into rooms afterwards, keep talking if you want, because there's a lot of things we talked about. Go ahead, Angela, and then Bill, and then Grant, and then Sky. Then we'll move on.
This morning was great, but yeah, the breakouts were interesting to see where and when we jumped to certain things. And then I felt awkward jumping too quick, because then I was like, I don't want to make people feel like I don't want to talk to them. I want to talk to them.
Benjamin's observation was perfect. It just totally felt like high school again, like the high school dance,
Yeah.
Something I was horrible at. Like I realized I was horrible at. I was one of those people that if I walked in, I didn't see any friends, I just walk out, and I still do that. Like if I walk in, I don't see anybody I know, I'm like, and I will leave now. Go ahead, Angela.
But it would help if like the rooms had magnet people, like the people that know and we know things. And also, if we get into the routine of doing this for a while, just have a few rooms that aren't labeled anything. Like, say I have a question for a specific person, we could go to that room. It doesn't have to be about a specific topic, and people can join. But...
Yeah, I I think we were talking about this the other day, I think, or maybe I was talking about it offline. I think a killer feature for Zoom would be ad hoc rooms created by the participants. The ability for people to just, the three of us are just going to create a room. Boom. It's like as if you were in the hallway and you wanted to walk out and talk to people, like that ability. And then not private, people can walk into it or walk out of it. But the point is that all these rooms start spawning, that people can just sit there and talk to each other, talk amongst yourselves. One of the things I like about the rooms is that we could have 4 or 5 conversations going on at the same time, as opposed to one group conversation that everyone's waiting to get into, like right now. Bill.
I think you will get better room moderators if we come up with a cool title for the job. So I'm going to propose, I don't know if it's room moderator, room guru. I kind of like room ranger. Figure something out that sounds nice, and then you can be that for the room. I think that would be cool.
I have to think about that. All right. Yeah, Grant.
My observation was that we've been so used to this experience and everyone having this one experience that when we had the opportunity to go in a different direction, there was a FOMO that was going on. It was kind of like, what am I missing out on? It was like, so I'm going into this other room and this is great, but there could be something amazing that's happening in the main room now. And we've only ever been used to being in one room all together. And so there is something about this larger group, but then, still having large groups, because I saw that there was groups that were getting bigger and bigger and rooms with no one in it. And so I think there's something about that 20, 30 people that we're used to in a panel. If we can get that with everyone, I think it's a good number.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, and I also thought that was interesting is having a couple bigger rooms and then having empty rooms did mean that individuals could go meet in some room. Like we're just going to go meet over in that room to chit chat a little bit. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, Grant, I think we're a herd. I think we're just a bunch of puppies that all want to be together. Mm-hmm. And the other, to Benjamin's point, is I think he pointed it out, the elephant in the room is we are just doing a social experiment on a new delivery device. So to Bill's point, with regards to what we should be called, Alex, I know you, when walking into a very nice hotel, what is your famous plaque that says on the wall?
Oh, you're being, ladies and gentlemen, in the Ritz hotels, when you walk through the loading dock, which I've done many times, I've gone through the loading dock in the Ritz hotel way more than I've ever gone through the front door, because I don't get rooms in the Ritz. I just work in the Ritz. Is ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
And to that point, I'm taking the Graham Care growing up in the hospitality industry. I'm thinking maybe we should have hosts, because we are giving opportunity for conversation and versus a guru that we're all having to try to go to and suck the brains out of.
We've gotten great chat about this in Makana already. Room wrangler and
my vote is host.
Oh, there we go. Very good. All right. Next question. Nope. You're
sorry about that. I was someplace else. Moving along. Benjamin Adiput says best AV gear deals that you have found on Black Friday. Who's found something really cool out there?
Go ahead, Courtney.
For you 3D printing aficionados, Creality is having a sale on those 3D printers. I'm talking to you, Guy. Time to jump in. You can get some there for under $200, $175. The Ender 3 V2 I have, and is a good 3D printer, and those are all on sale today, and they ship from the United States and arrive at your door. I usually get them in 3 or 4 days. They must have a warehouse in Los Angeles somewhere.
But Courtney, the one from Naomi Wu with the print bed that rolls out isn't available yet. That's perfect for doing
it shipped to a few people. I don't think they're manufactured. They just hit. I saw a thing where she hit $1 million in her Kickstarter campaign for that. So I assume they will be rolling.
That went live like 2 days ago.
Quite quickly.
Yeah. I would recommend getting a 3D printer and playing with it to get your head around it. I'm really glad that I did. I have to build some custom mounts for actually the ATEM, but they have to they have to hold the ATEM up, but I also have to use them to map to basically attach it to a frame, inside of a rack mount, because I'm building this little kit that is, a box, and I have to have the ATEM in there, and I need to have it go into the slots that sit underneath the. There's, it's a tray, and then it has little slots in it for air, and I'm printing them so that it'll pop into that to kind of give it more sticking power. And what's great about it is that I was able to download. I think I actually downloaded Courtney's little thing, but I can add to it. Just take it and add some things to it, and then print it out. And the ability to just build things that you just go, oh, I'm just going to make this right now. Now I have to figure out how long it's going to take me to print 10 of them. But the as Guy knows, that will take a little while. But the fact that I have my head around it, the thing that you want to look at, and why we want to talk about things like AR right now and HDR and Atmos, is not because we need them today. It's because we need them in the future. And we think that I think that those are going to be in high demand, as we move forward. And, one of my quotes, which I've used here before, I didn't make up the quote. I think someone said it was my quote, but I took it from The Heist from David Mamet, is, when did Noah build the ark? Before the rain. So you want to think about, getting your head around things long before you actually need them, and a printer now for $200 or $300 is a great investment in just understanding how STLs work and how the support structures work and everything else, so that when you need it, you don't have to come up with it all at one time. Benjamin and then Victor.
Real quick on the mass manufacturing 3D printing note. I made the great mistake over the summer of designing a really cool thing and then just trying to print 10 of them. And if you have the money, just send it out to one of those 3D printing places, the mail order 3D printing places, and they'll save you so much time. It's well worth the money.
Yeah, I'm for this kit, I'm actually thinking of sending them out and having them printed in metal, from Shapeways. I'm just looking at what the turnaround is, mostly because I just want it to look cool. Victor and then John.
Yeah, for all of us in here, Isotope is running a fantastic deal on their RX Elements 8.
Oh, yeah.
$29 is
What?
a smoking price. It's just the elements, but you get, dehumming, clipping. You can use it for background sound suppression, while using something like audio hijack. So you could actually pipe it in here. For $29, you can't beat that deal. I'll put a link in Wakana.
It's a great deal. John?
Yeah, I was going to second Shapeways as a resource for 3D printing.
Whoop, you did.
I got a miniature for my gaming.
Yeah.
For those who don't know me, I play Dungeons and Dragons virtually lately, but I did back the Kickstarter for Hero Forge's 3D models, and they sent me what looked to be a professionally painted 3D miniature that was printed that way in color. If you want to see it, I can pull it off the shelf, but it's just amazing what they can do nowadays.
Big chunk of my childhood was painting D&D figurines. It was like that was like I had a whole paint set, and that was like listening to music and painting figurines was a big part of my childhood. Anyway, go ahead. And when I say childhood, up until I was 18. So, Paul. Go ahead, Paul. You're a lot quieter than we expected.
The Echo Dot, is Paul me or the other Paul? There's two
Nope,
Pauls
you're
now.
Paul Wallace.
All right, thank you. The Echo Dot is on sale for 30 off, and the Echo Show 8 is 65 off. That's half price, and the Echo Show 5, you can save 75, and also get the Blink. They throw in a Blink Mini. I don't know what a Blink Mini is. Does anyone know?
Nope, it's you're coming in really low. You're like a negative 35. So I don't know what the Blink Mini is though.
He's facing away from the mic too.
Yeah, you're gonna have to, given your current gain, Paul, you're gonna have to be right on that mic, right on it. Yeah, almost eating it for us to hear.
I'm eating the mic now.
Yeah,
Blink Mini is
I'm eating it.
Blink Mini is a small camera.
Okay, very good. Mickey, you had your hand up.
Yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh, for the sound nerds out there, sound designers, musicians, and even people who just want to play around with stuff, Sound Toys has an excellent deal right now. I can't recall exactly, but I saw it this morning, and
What's it? What is it? Sound what?
Sound Toys. They're a plug-in manufacturer.
Okay.
And they have like very creative tools, not really like something you might use on a live stream, but if you're doing music or if you're doing sound design work, excellent tools there.
There was one tool that I'm still trying to find that we had back in the 90s, which was a guy had just figured out how to take the spectrogram. I think spectrogram. I can't always get spectrograph, but the image of your music or sound, that where it's the full. Take it into Photoshop. You could edit it in Photoshop and then bring it back into as a sound. You could apply Photoshop filters to the sound because it would remap all of what you saw there back into.
That's fascinating.
It was kind of the most magical thing ever, and you could create. It was a sound effects designer, so you can't do it for voices or something like that because it immediately changes everything. But it changed. It was kind of my favorite tool ever, and now I can't remember what it is. 25 years ago, it's too many brain cells ago. I can't remember what it was called.
Along the same lines, there was a tool. I don't know if it's still around, but a way for people to sort of hide copy protection by drawing some like a logo or some text like up in the like 19 kilohertz, 18 kilohertz. Like most people can't hear that, but they can draw lines there and sort of copyright stamp the files.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeffrey and then Paul King.
First of all, how's my audio?
It's good so far.
Okay, perfect. So Newer, you can get it on Amazon. You can go to Newer's website, and they've got a
Newer. It's
Newer.
It's NEEWER.
And then I found this on Amazon today. If you want to get your first C stands, they have C stands for under $100. 20% off on their deal.
Yeah, C stands kind of have settled with an arm. A C stand with an arm has settled to about $145. So anything under 100 is a pretty good deal. Go ahead, Paul.
During this morning's breakout sessions, we talked about Black Friday deals a little bit, which was really fun. And Diogo, I think that's how you say his name, mentioned the Julian loudness meter is on sale today for $29.
Oh, that's great.
So that was a good recommendation this morning.
And that's another one you can throw right into Audio Hijack, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. And Grant?
Just the AirPods Pro. I bought them today, and this is something that's great about living in Australia, is that in America you would get a $25 gift card when you bought one of these. In Australia, you get a $35 gift card. Don't ask me actually how much I had to pay for these though. They're $3.99 in Australia, so that's how much I had to pay. But
at our exchange rate, that gift card is identical.
Yeah, I know, of course it is. Apple's not trying to give an advantage to Australia, but I'm looking forward to messing around with the spatial sound, audio, and playing around with these. So it's fun to have.
It's worth it. I mean, if you think about it at all, it's really worth it. And I can't wait until Apple supports Atmos in music because I'm so ready to get rid of Tidal. Like I'm already like, how do we get rid of these guys? They're so expensive. Anyway. So it's so expensive for what I get, and so I'm looking forward to Apple doing that. Apple Music. Anyway, all right. Next question.
Well, I got to mention, I'm going to punch into Makana a fabulous 3D realization of the original 1200 baud dial-up modem system. And for those who like spectrograms, it's just fun to watch. All right, now we can move on to the next question. Paul Edison Lamb says, follow up to a question the other day about academic lecture halls. Would you recommend a switcher for PowerPoint and speaker camera feeds?
Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm not going to answer the question, but I'm just going to say to Bill, the link didn't work. There's no link in that comment.
Oh, rats. I'll go find it, repost it.
So to get back to the question, I would absolutely recommend a switcher between having a switcher that you can do picture-in-picture or you can switch back and forth. The easier thing to do is picture in picture. I'm a pretty big fan of switching, back and forth between the speaker and the content. I don't like watching picture in picture myself. I feel like it feels very corporate. And when you switch back and forth or create some kind of designed look with the super source or something like that, it feels more like broadcast and feels more grown up than picture in picture. Anyway, Grant.
Yeah, I'm designing a system at the moment for 6 breakout rooms that we need to stream, and so we're physically on site in a convention center, and we need to do this. We need to do PowerPoint and a talking head. And I agree. I like the idea of going full screen on both, but there are lots of times where you just know, like I said the other day, when someone has 2 slides a minute, 3 slides a minute, like you just haven't got, you can't predict when you can throw to a full screen talking head and you miss a slide altogether. And so I keep going back and forth. I'm sold on just getting Blackmagic gear. The thing that I'm sitting at the moment is 2 ATEM minis. And I've seen a couple of guys on YouTube that have just done, one ATEM mini going into another that then gives you 2 downstream keys. And so then you can really, if you want to make your PowerPoint screen, reduced and then have the talking head reduced and a nice gray background or something, you can do that with 2 ATEM minis. You can go sort of up in the ATEM, the 4Ks and the higher range, or the MEs, ME1 and such, but then you lose these other scaled inputs and the live streaming and the recording and all these great things that we have on the ATEM. So for the price and for the bang for what you get, it seems like having 2 ATEMs can do a whole lot of stuff.
It can, and I admit that I'm probably not a good example, because we've been running all summer on constellations, and so we're just used to, we've got 2 super sources, and it just makes a great show. It just works, and it makes a great show, but it's a much more expensive. So I think that the ATEM minis, to your point, I think that makes a lot of sense. And again, go ahead, Grant.
Lower down in the range, where do you get 2 super sources? Because is that where
vMix?
Oh, no, I know. I mean, in the Blackmagic range.
2ME. The 2ME is the first one that does super sources, and once you have super sources, it's pretty slick.
Oh, they're great. So the ATEM, what'll be interesting is what happens what's the next product they do, the next refresh they do, and if they do an 8-channel ATEM mini with SDI or something like that, and it'll blow the market away.
Yeah, if they can add that, I mean, I think that's an expense thing and a processing thing to be able to do the super sources. What's really great is super sources when they're mixed with macros. So I know that it can take. I know that Kevin Maurer, who does a lot of our shows that way, like a show will be a day of him setting up all those super sources. Like, there's a 2-up and a 3-up, and everyone have lower thirds, and you have all these things and you work with the client on all the different looks that they want to have, and how are we branding it all. So there's like a day of setting all of that up. But then during the show, it's just tapping and making it go. I do think that I think you might be able to build it in QLab, to do that. But I think you might be able to take inputs. I don't know. QLab might be able to serve that up and then serve it in. Go ahead, Stuart, and then Victor.
Just answering what Grant was speculating there for Blackmagic, the 2 things they should do is an SDI version and a external box that has XLR audio in and uses the HDMI audio channels to transfer it from the audio box to the switcher. That would be absolutely fabulous.
Dante. We'll never get that, but it's like everybody look at Maddie. I'm like, oh, Maddie. Anyway, Victor,
can you explain super sources, please?
Yeah, super source is like a picture-in-picture, but you have up to 4 sources. And so what you can do in a super source is, you can have many sources, but the way the Blackmagic one sets up is you can have either a foreground element or a background element, and then you can have take 4 of your video feeds and put them all into boxes. So now when you see it, and people call it lots of different things, but a super source is what Blackmagic calls it. when you watch CNN or you watch one of these shows where there's like 3 talking heads and the host, and it's designed and they're a little smaller and he or she's a little bigger, that's what we would call in a black magic world a super source. And that's another source that you have in a 2ME and above. The interesting thing is you can do a background or a foreground. So the reason you do a foreground super source, and that's your graphic element, is you can punch over top. So your video is just squares, right? But then you can just drop something on top of them, and you don't have to figure out exactly. They don't have to be exactly correct. Just kind of, and you can also have little things like rounded corners. So if you do an overlay on top, you can round the corners on it, which is a little. And I do really complex versions of that of rounded. I'm really into rounded corners mostly because broadcasters almost never do it. Because it's so hard on a broadcast switcher. It's really hard to do square. So if you do a rounded corner and you're talking to a broadcaster who's watching it, they're always like, "So how are you doing that?" Anybody who builds those will point at that because they're not used to being able to do that. So the super source is great. The other thing to remember is that's where, when you start using super sources, is when you really start using multiple MEs, because what you'll do is you're not saying that this video over here is a input 1, it's ME4, right? So this super source is the source for the big window is ME4, and you can cut a whole show in there. That's like when you have people, like you might have two or three talking heads in a big window, and you're cutting another show in that window while they're talking about it, right? And so that's when you ask, like, why would you have all these MEs? Because you start to need to stack shows inside of windows, and that's really where one of the big reasons that you use multiple MEs is to serve up these super sources with what they need. Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah,
showing a nice example.
Yeah. The ATEM OSC, you were talking about QLab, that should be able to provide for you, how to get stuff into the ATEMs via OSC and QLab. So that's what I use to switch cameras, and one of the commands does say super source. So
Peter, John, and then Stuart, and then we'll move on.
Well, I was gonna say, because I use Mimo Live, and it essentially can emulate using creating the super source.
Absolutely.
And with rounded corners now, Alex.
Yep. Mimo Live is great for that. Absolutely. So I should have said that one first as well, because I've used the Mimo Live for the super sources as well. I get a little worried about putting lots of video input into a software switcher. So with both Mimo and vMix, I may mention them, but I haven't done it very much, just because it's starting to put a lot of pressure. You really have to have a machine that can handle it. It's not the software.
I don't have that problem, Alex.
You don't have that problem, right? I do. So I worry about that. So, John.
Peter just answered my question. I was going to say, I thought you were maybe using Mimo now to create complex mix effects. I mean, I come from the new world of software switching. And so when I hear you talk about MEs and downstream and upstream keyers, it just seems so prohibitive to me when we can build these really complex things on the software side and throw them in.
The issue is that whether you're using those, when you're using them in software, it's very, very easy for you to ask the software to do more than the hardware is capable of, and then you end up with lag and breakup and slowdown and everything else. The hardware switchers are very limited, but they always do what they're told to do. Like with an ATEM, when you say, I want to do this thing, it just does it. Like it doesn't like have suddenly your lower thirds start getting slow when they come out, or something else isn't there, or it crashes. We don't see that very often on an ATEM, because the hardware is there to back up. It's like a gold-backed currency. A software switcher is like what we have now. Anyway, go ahead, Stuart.
Just to Victor's point, there's no round overlays, but there we go. And if I just cut to a different camera, I'm doing this on vMix using multiple inputs. So I'll actually use this input here which is that one there, I should say, when I move the screen so you guys can see it, to do the sizing. And then this one is actually doing all the layers and backgrounds. So I can change a fair amount of stuff in there. And it's pretty flexible, and you've just got to remember to make sure you do your animations properly.
Yep. And again, I and to back up, I do use Mimo Live. I use it mostly for webinars that need to have stuff that's just more of a single person that needs to do a bunch of things. But it's not something I do for heavy lifting. I do a lot of use hardware. Go ahead, Paul King.
Sorry, I realized we moved on to a different question, but if you're not familiar with Camel, anyone familiar with Camel? It's a very dangerous, awesome site. Tracks Amazon prices. You can set up price alerts, and anytime it hits the threshold, you'll get an email. So beware, it's an awesome site, but you'll spend a lot of money.
Very good. It's like the old Woot. All right, next question.
Okay, moving on to our own Tucker Dragu. I actually can't pronounce it today, but hi, Tucker. It's good to see you. Happy Thanksgiving. I'm getting started with AWS Media Live, and I'm considering standardizing on elementals for contribution. Are you able to use 2 as redundant inputs to AWS?
As of about a week and a half ago, yes. So that was a big thing that was missing, was the ability to have 2. So now what you can do is there's you can set it up as a standard input, and that standard input can have there was standard and then single, and then you can now in Media Live set it up as a standard and set 2 devices as that input. So you can absolutely use the links as a primary and a backup. But that wasn't available until I think maybe 2 weeks ago, week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It was something that they were working on. So it's new, but definitely available. Grant?
If we bring back extended Saturdays, it'd be great to do a masterclass on that from start to getting it going, and
I can even bring the guys on from Elemental to do that, and we can do it as a second hour or whatever. Yeah,
it's
the
probably a
problem
2-hour session, but
yeah, it probably is. It really isn't. It's not that complicated. It's pretty simple, at least to get started. We could just do multiple sessions, but the main problem that I have right now is that the company, my links are in the company system, so I have to build a new AWS account so that all my company information doesn't show up in the screen capture. That's the only reason that we haven't done it until now, and I'll get that fixed, and then I can walk
you can use my account to set it all.
There we go. Yeah, we'll link those links up for you. All right. Next question.
Moving on to Angela Iserman, who's in the panel for the first time today, Golden Bridge, New York. What was the biggest nugget you've learned from this group?
Go ahead, Guy.
I'd probably say when Grant alluded to look into Zoom rooms, they do some powerful stuff. And so I went on this journey. I installed it first on a little 2013 MacBook Pro that I had laying around, 7-year-old computer, and got hooked, and now doing some pretty cool stuff with it.
That's awesome. John, and then John Preto, and then John Pruitt.
So Alex hit the nail on the head. The value of this program is the community, and it's these people that we've made connections with, and work is going on, and stuff's getting done, and additional learning, and that is, to me, the real value of office hours.
Go ahead, John Pruitt.
I think it's that talented people and smart people want to share their knowledge, and they just need a platform to do it.
Bill?
I learned when I worked at NAB probably 4 or 5 years ago. I saw this incredible flood of IT people coming into my old video space that I had been in for a long time. And there was so much to learn, particularly just the acronyms, the NDI and OBS and all that stuff that I had been kind of walled off from because I was in traditional production for so many years. And just the amount of expertise, not even, I don't dig down and understand how it works, but I know about it. That has let me find things that I would not have found other ways because I had the language to search on it and go deeper. That's been transformative for me.
Yeah. Sky?
Well, to your point, language, again, you heard me talk about who would have thought 6 months ago that gallery view would be a thing in the world's language. Also, Tony Campolo once pointed out, if you live in a cul-de-sac and you have 6 houses down there, why would each of you have a lawnmower when you could go together, buy a really good riding lawnmower, and then share it 6 days a week? So there's a philosophical thought.
Grant, and then Tony.
I talk about how Alex's greatest hits, because we there's lots of questions that come up that have the same answer or a story, and we start to hear these stories. And I've joked with a couple of the guys where I'm like, Alex starts a story that I've heard, and I'm like, oh, I love this one. And so it's just like, there'll be a question that's asked, and then it'll be like, and so one of the nuggets that I hear and I use all the time now is when we're talking about remote presenters and how we do Zoom better, and a phrase that I just love is this: it's not how someone feels. It's not how someone thinks. It's how they feel, and so it's not how they think that they are looking at how someone is coming across, but it's how they feel. And so when their camera is way low and you're looking down, and the audio's bad and whatever, lots of people don't even think about. They can't articulate that, but there's something going on as they feel it. It's lower brain stuff, and I'm talking to people about that all the time. So that's one of my favorite greatest hits of Alex's.
I realized that, so I tweeted something last night because my wife and I had this interaction yesterday. This is a news story for you, Grant. So I don't know how often, this will be hopefully another one of the greatest hits.
That's a new release.
It's a new release. This is a new release. I'm breaking it out today. So my wife and I had this discussion. She said, hey, the kids and I are going to watch the, I don't know, Thanksgiving, whatever, Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving or whatever. And I said, oh, I don't watch Charlie Brown. I won't watch Charlie Brown. And she was like, what is wrong with you? Like, she was just like, and I was like, I won't watch it. But I said, but you got to understand that for me, Charlie Brown, The Office, Borat, Curb Your Enthusiasm, all live in this uncomfortable comedy that I won't watch. And then I realized, I didn't realize it until I said it, they all live in the same box for me. That box in my head, everyone has a box that they build boxes in different ways. That box in my head the other things that live in the same box is every horror film ever made. Like literally every horror film ever made and those comedies in my brain are all the same. Like they're all like they're in a little bubble together, and I won't watch any of them. And I don't watch horror films. I also don't watch Curb Your Enthusiasm or Peanuts. And it was funny because I tweeted it out and and then people were like, what's wrong? But I realized that I'm super sensitive to how people feel, and so when I talk about that, it's that I'm like, it's also why I need to see the screen and see how people are reacting to things. But I'm super sensitive to it. And I'm like someone who doesn't really enjoy sarcasm, unless I really know you and I'm really clear that you're going to think it's funny, I won't do it almost ever. And I was trying to think of anybody I know that's like a really good producer or really, high-end person that uses sarcasm. And I was like, no, nobody, nobody I know that does that, that does that, there's, or they don't pick at people, like they don't like producers that I work with. I was trying to think of any of them that pick at people that are like the ones that I consider like the best producers I work with. And I was like, no, they don't do that. But it was a philosophical thing that I was thinking about last night because of that conversation, because it was just like, I didn't even think about it. I was just like, no, I don't ever watch that. And I don't even like what we were working on a project where the Peanuts were showing up on the thing. I didn't even like looking at it. Like, it makes me so frustrated. You're like, and it's a funny thing. It's a funny thing anyway. But anyway, the point is that I do think that part of what makes this work is that we're conscious to how people feel related to what we're doing. That people feel accepted, that people feel acknowledged, that people feel, that they have to feel those things, because it's not, they may not come here. They may decide not to come back. They won't know why. To get to your point, Grant, they won't know why they don't feel like coming back. They just don't feel like coming back. And we have to be, as we build shows and as we interact with people, we have to think about that the people aren't always conscious of why they make choices. They just make them. And then they just, something else gets in and it might even be something, they're just busy that morning. And that this doesn't feel like a draw to them. And so it's super important. And I think, again, the quality of our audio, the quality of our video, the quality of our conversation, to your point, Grant, is what keeps people coming back, is that, and it makes it so that it's valuable every day, for them.
But what about Seinfeld? Is he in that category?
Yeah, I won't watch Seinfeld either.
You don't like Seinfeld?
I don't like Seinfeld. I do not. Seinfeld's on the border, but I generally won't watch it. It makes me uncomfortable. It's not relaxing for me, which is funny because I can watch A-Team, Man on Fire, Like those are totally relaxing for me. And Jason Bourne, like I can watch Jason Bourne any day of the week. If Jason Bourne comes on, if there's only 10 minutes left, I can just watch Jason Bourne forever. And so it's not a violent thing, or there's a certain level of uncomfortableness that I just don't like, and but it's those don't live in that box. I can totally relax to crazy movies, but I can't relax to horror or uncomfortable humor. Okay, who was next? Stuart, because your hand's still up. I didn't register. Oh, and then Tony. Go ahead, Stuart.
I'm going to ramble a bit, but I'll try to make the point succinct. And I'll start by actually going back to what Angela asked. And one of the things is actually an example from Alex, where I've learned that it's okay for serious nerds to wear makeup on camera to look better in their Zooms. Okay? But just to your point on humor, and I will say that Borat is a waste of Sacha Baron Cohen's talents. There are really three major types of humor. There's the English style, which is to laugh at the absurdity of the universe and everything going around. There's the Aussie style, which is to laugh at ourselves and invite our mates to laugh with us. I'll see if I can get a nod from Grant out of this with two examples of it as two TV shows from the 70s and 80s in Australia called Kingswood Country and Acropolis Now, because they're people who laugh at themselves and invite their mates to laugh with them. Mm-hmm. The third type of humor that comes across, and sadly it's out of a lot of American films where it's evidenced by many politicians worldwide, is where they laugh at a person. They don't laugh with. So it's like they're talking down to the thing, and that's what you get in those movies, where they're laughing at, and you end up turning off or finding something else to watch. And knowing that that's there is... That's a learning experience, Stephen. See that?
We've kind of wandered off. I took us off the path there, but it's good. It's an interesting conversation. But
Socrates probably told a joke or two. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Tony?
Yeah. I just wanted to say, and this bears repeating. Alex, you sort of hit on it. You hit on it. So regular people feel comfortable here, and as a regular person, I realize that you guys are professional video, audio people. But as a regular guy, I feel comfortable here. And so I thank you for doing what you do. But also, I'm mad at you, Alex, because I'm spending a whole lot of money on Netflix and Prime Video and all of these streaming services, and I'm not watching them anymore because I'm constantly trying to improve how I look on camera and how to learn how to use Final Cut Pro and DaVinci. And when I'm doing all of these things, I'm just throwing money out of the window. So again, I want to thank the Brain Trust, and I heard that used before. I want to thank the Brain Trust for allowing regular people to feel comfortable. So thank you again.
Thank you. And I think that the thing that I learn out of this is that it's not that I learned something amazing in any given day. It's that I learned lots of little things, and I feel like I'm accumulating general wisdom about what I do. It is so hard to keep up with our industries, for audio, video, events, all these other things. And we've been blessed enough to have this incredible group of people of all ages that are bringing... Benjamin came in and has all this information about DMX. So I'm like, we now have a new expert. Like a new person's going to add things. And then of course, there are sometimes people ask questions about meetings, and I'm like, well, Grant's not here. When Grant comes back, you got to ask that question. And there's audio stuff with Mickey, and with each person, there's different people, and all of us are researching different things in our lives. We have different experiences. But what's happening is we're trading notes every single day. There's this cross-pollination that goes on between different types of professionals. And I think that's the thing, is that most times it's a single, it's a monoculture. And I think that the fact that it's not that is really powerful. Go ahead, Angela. And then Bill.
Yeah,
Ben,
I definitely
Benjamin.
feel that during this pandemic, it's like you cut off ties to everybody. Like half the reason why I get expertise is because I'm backstage overhearing people.
Yep.
And that was like the biggest miss in my life. And even just listening to you guys at the end of the day, like I've heard people say you're like the average of the 10 people you hang out with. Well, I've been hanging out with you guys and I feel smarter, and thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Bill?
I think another thing that can't be overlooked is that this is real time, and with our industry morphing and changing and bringing new things in so fast, the fact that one person on the panel will get hip to some, oh, have you heard about and we're all going, what the heck? And then suddenly it becomes part of my understanding and world about that. And that many voices out there, many ears listening and bringing to the group is amazingly powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben, go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah, I feel like I have a very different perspective than many of you, and I just want to say again, thank you for welcoming me into the group. I feel like, again, I really want to echo Tony. This feels like a safe space to ask questions, regardless of how knowledgeable or not I am in a topic. And I think that's really special. I haven't found that in many groups, and especially of folks with so much expertise. So this has been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate the atmosphere you built.
Well, thank you, and I'm the fact that you and Angela and Tony and other folks have joined the panel. That and Tony's been here for a while, kind of, but many of you. The fact that we have such a wide range of folks and new folks in the most recent part of this is, to me, what I measure as success. Is that, and that we keep hardened professionals in here as well that have been doing this for 20 or 30 years. Having both of them in the same place at the same time is super tricky, and super hard to keep it. But what's interesting is that the questions drive the knowledge all the time. And regardless of whether they're a newbie question or not, it's the power of how we discuss it. Other things come up, and so it's, even a simple question is a valuable thing for us to all learn. And there's a lot of things that we don't want to admit we don't understand. So we just wait until someone explains it and we're like, okay, now I understand it. And so, but as the interesting thing about this is that as we keep on doing this, we're all getting smarter faster, because the quality of that conversation keeps on getting better, and so as this group gets bigger and as we keep on having the conversation, the quality of the questions and the quality of the answers keeps on getting, better and better and better. So it's something that is it's kind of like our version of the M1 chip. Everything's all in one place. All right, next question.
Moving on to Paul Wallace of the panel in Austin, Texas. What labeling in gaffer's tape is the easiest to write on? I know we kind of talked about this, but never got it resolved.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, just saying, a piece of this is what kind of labeling you have to do. Some types of tape are better for ballpoint. Some are better for Sharpie. What do you want? Something permanent? Do you want board tape where it's one of its great strengths is that you can take a pencil, write on it, erase it immediately, and rewrite on it. So that's one of the things about all these tapes is they all have their little different aspects that make them important.
Pencils.
Yeah, I've seen people do that when they have like a real changing environment. It's no, they're not on one, somebody else is on one. I've seen big smudgy board tape things. You can tell they've rewritten it 9 times.
Yeah, there is marking tape, so there's not just gaffer tape, there's marking tape. So there's panel tape that you can use. And I don't know what the brand is, but we use it. That's a little less sticky than, it's really funny when you start getting into tape. You get into this, there's these wide range of how sticky they are and whether they're shiny or not and whether you can write on them or not. And so there is panel marking tape that we buy that's either 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch that we'll put underneath, like for instance, a switcher. You put it there and you can draw on it. And so there's, you can get that, and that's a little less, there's 2 things about it. The surface is smoother, so it's easier to write on, and it's a little less sticky. And so it kind of works well for panel marking. And then, of course, there's gaff tape, and there's different gaff tapes. So, for instance, Bonn, BONN, American Gaffer, I think is what we usually buy mostly, but Bonn is less sticky than American Gaffer, and it's actually the required gaff tape for the Moscone Center, and it's more expensive, but Moscone requires it so it doesn't stick on their it doesn't leave any residue on their carpets, and then we use Velcro. If you're doing it across carpets, we always have these Velcro paths which means that you're not throwing it away at the end. And it's also really nice because you can add more cables to it without laying more tape. So you can get these Velcro ones that we use there. And so there's a lot of what we never use, pretty much ever, is duct tape. And for our friends in Europe, some people call that gaff tape. It's not. It's duct tape, and we don't use that. No, please. Anyway, Stuart, and then John.
Duct tape may also be described as a very wide version of electrical tape or lecky tape.
No, for us,
Now,
electrical
for
tape is a different
tape-
thing. Electrical tape in the U.S. is a very stretchy, thin,
Binder.
small. It's not duct tape at all. Electrical tape for us is something different. Gaff tape may be that somewhere else, but for us, electrical tape is a completely different
That's what
beast.
duct tape is. Duct tape is the wide version of that.
Oh,
But for gaffer tape itself, if you want it to be less sticky, something like the Duvetine or a piece of carpet, put the tape down a couple of times, pull it up, get it hairy, and then it's easy to pull off of things without marking them. Do not put gaffer tape on polished wooden floorboards, especially for those of you who may be doing weddings and need to run power cables. But for writing on, and back to the question, the actual answer is the tape we use for doing masking on bodywork for cars, because it'll go down, it peels off without leaving much of a residue. You can write on it. As for removing residue, I think eucalyptus oil will break down the stuff on gaffer tape. It definitely wipes off any residue left from masking tape.
In the U.S. we use Gooby Gone. Gooby Gone is
Or
like
goof off.
Gooby Gone is you just wipe off all the cables if someone accidentally put some duct tape on it, which then you make them do it because they did that. John. Yeah, there it is. Goo Gone. Goo Gone. Sorry, Goo Gone. There it is. That is for us. That's been the magic stuff. That's what we use for.
Goo Gone is nice. Goof Off is not. It's like Bestine. It's a really bad chemical, and you want to use it only in places, but it'll dissolve any adhesive.
Right.
All of
John.
those don't have the nice smell of eucalyptus
I know.
oil, though.
Eucalyptus would be way nicer. John Pruitt.
For those of us with bad handwriting, like myself, I'm going to advocate for a label maker instead of tape.
Yep, absolutely. If you're going to do anything that's going to last more than a show, and even if it's only going to last a show, I have a tendency to add labels. I don't like to see handwriting. So you'll find that I'm very anti-handwriting for anything. I have really bad handwriting. Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say one thing, just comment on Stuart's comment about they're the same. Electrical tape and duct tape are the same. I don't know about his part of the world, but in our part of the world here in North America, you would get in huge trouble with Underwriters Laboratory if they discovered that you were using duct tape when you should be using electrical tape and vice versa. They are not the same.
Yeah.
One is guaranteed non-conductive, one is not.
Courtney?
And one of my pet peeves is people that stick down cables with gaffer tape to the floor lengthwise. And then when you try and pull it up, it wraps around itself and
never pull it up by the cable.
And it will ruin your cable faster than anything. So
I've spent a whole day with a razor blade gently cutting off a sandwiched gaffer tape cable thing to try to recover it, and then having to use Goof Off or something like that to try to get through. It's terrible. Don't do that.
If it gets hot, you'll never get the adhesive off.
We really wandered on this one, but there's an hour, not an hour, but there's like a 10-minute video I keep on meaning to make about how I set down, because I train people on exactly how I want my things to be taped along the floor, which is that you tape one end and then you go to the far end and you pull it really tight. You have someone hold down, you pull it really tight so it's a straight line. And I usually want it to be parallel with something like the wall or something like that. It drives me crazy when it's slightly off. I'll look at it all day if you make it slightly off the wall. And then I lay down every 3 feet or every meter, I put one little cross to hold it, and then I put one piece of tape, and I just set it. I set the tape on the. As I do it, I set the middle of the tape roll on the cable, and then I just push my hand across it, and I just keep on going down. So it's one long piece that goes all the way down, because then at the end of the day, it's one long piece that comes up before I before I pull up the cable. And if you pull up the cable first, then it'll get exactly what you talked about. But if you pull the tape off, it's easy. The problem you get into is people put like a piece of tape every 3 feet or something like that, and then it's just like a disaster. Go ahead, Angela.
The worst is old gaffer's tape, and that's like the hardest exercise of trying to rip that thing off the roll.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Grant.
I started out a lot in a hotel with an AV production company. And so when you're in a hotel, you basically just gaff all day. And so my trick always was, I don't care how thin the cable is, if you're gaffing even just one cable, I'll always do 2 strips wide. And so I do exactly what you said, Alex, except I'll go down one side of it and then I'll go down another. And you'll never get the problem. I can rip the whole thing up. It'll never wrap back around because it's too wide, and it easily comes up, and it stays down, and it looks great. You use a lot of gaff, but
hey, in high
looks
traffic
really
areas,
hotel's paid for it. You're not
I'll
paid
do
for it.
3 strips. I'll do a center strip, and then I'll put one down the right and one down the left if people are walking over it like across a doorway, because you don't want to trip people. That's bad mojo.
Stuart, and then we'll move on.
Since we've digressed really deeply, firstly, Alex, when it comes to pulling the cable tight, there are actually standards on how hard you can pull on a cable. So hearing that kind of makes me, that'll pull the cable, or that'll stretch the cable, that'll change the dielectric, and never, ever pull fiber optic tight. But the question for people, especially once Grant and Bill laid out the 2 pieces paralleled in the side, do you put the pieces down the parallel down the side first, or do you do it last? Because I learnt first, so that the piece down the middle will peel up away from the cable with the pieces on the side.
Yeah,
I've never had a problem with that. Foot on the cable.
There's a lot of
start and
only here
gently.
can we have a half an hour conversation about tape.
Right. This week in tape.
So the last thing I'll say is that the labeler that I use is the P-Touch Cube Plus for general labeling is really awesome, because you can connect it to your computer and you have a great app, or you have or you can connect it with your phone and push it out. Now there's other ones. Brady makes ones that are like indestructible, and you can print on metal. So I have one of those as well. But as a general purpose, what I have in my office, that's what I use. Anyway, next question. We're gonna move on. Next question. We're going to start going really fast because we talked about a handful of questions for really long, and everyone did what I asked, which is add a lot of questions. And so we're going to not go really fast, but we're going to probably be a little more to the point than we have been. All right, next question.
Yeah, we've got like 19 left. John D. Pruitt is next, Huntersville, North Carolina. Could I get the panels, especially Mickey's feedback on my audio hijack chain?
Go ahead, John.
Oops.
Sure, there you go. That's what I'm using. I didn't know what I was doing. I've got the delay in there, and yes, I've got one for my Scarlett, as well as one for the one that I'm using currently, which is the headset mic. I've got a de-hum in there just to be careful. De-noise, which I usually redo before each session, and again, that's because I got a huge fan going on my computer. Low pass filter. That seemed nice to put in there. I don't know what that does. And then the volume is how I adjust. EQ, which really doesn't do anything. I just threw that in there because I thought I would use it and never took it back out. And then I have this peak thing here. And then I've got, because some people force me to use Cisco and some people force me to use Zoom, I have this going to the headset that I want to use, so that I can adjust the volume easier. So anything I left out or should add to it to make for a better sound experience.
Mickey?
Yeah. Oh, what is the other chain up there that has a Scarlett as the input? What's that for?
That's for my Heil PR40.
And you switch between those?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I would have an EQ for each, because like I would have an EQ for each mic, because definitely each mic would react differently to your voice. So I would tailor fit like an EQ specifically for that mic, And yes, aside from that, I think like I would have, since if ever you do add an EQ for each mic chain, I would have the volume slider come after the EQ. So the volume would be the last. Just thinking how it is routed like in an actual mixer. You have your chain of processors, like you start with you start with your gain, and then you have your EQs and all that, and then at the very last part of a channel in a channel strip, you have your fader. So I mean that's how I think of things in terms of chains. So that's just my personal thing. Like have the fader, have the volume at the very end.
Good, Paul.
That makes sense.
How do you generate that diagram?
This is not a diagram. This is sharing my screen. This is the program.
Audio hijack.
Okay, audio hijack. Yeah.
Yep. Absolutely. All right, that's great. Oh, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah. For the low pass filter, it's not doing anything at the moment, correct?
It's just not that I'm aware of. I threw it in there. I thought it might get rid of some of the lower noise.
A low pass would actually cut the highs instead of cut the lows.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's set to 20K. You can't even hear what it's it's letting at 20K. Okay. It's letting everything through, so you won't hear it until it gets down to maybe 12. 12 to 14.
So I should get rid of it.
It's not doing anything.
Maybe like slowly slide it down as you're speaking and see where you hear a change in your dialogue, and then like just back it off from that point, so that since you're only I assume for this setup you're only needing to transmit your speech, so you can cut off everything above the range of your speech just to make sure it's clean. You're not sending over signal that you don't need to send. And then I would actually add a high pass as well, and maybe put it, depending on your what mic you're using, maybe either at 80 hertz or 120 hertz, somewhere there. Just listen to it. But yeah, definitely add a high pass so that you're cutting off the rumble, as you mentioned.
Good. Courtney?
Yeah, Mickey just covered most of it. Yeah, the low, usually a low pass filter is only if you have a problem with sibilance, whistling S's or too much mouth noise, it can help out a little bit that, but normally I wouldn't use it. Low end roll off takes everything like 80 hertz and down to get rid of, touching the mic noise and various low frequency hum that can create a problem.
Grant, did you have anything last? Any last words?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about the high pass filter as well, and you covered it.
Okay, cool. Next question.
Andy Dolph, Durham, North New Hampshire. When using Zoom rooms into a switcher, how do you get both the mix minus and the comm sent back into the Zoom room machine for the far end guest?
So the way we do it, it can be done in a lot of different ways, but basically we have, now we're using a ClearComm Eclipse, and so we're using Dante to pass the program. So all the Zoom rooms go into let's say a QL1 or CL5, one or the other, depending on what we're doing. And all the Zoom rooms go into there. Then we send the mix minus via Dante to the Eclipse. The Eclipse is actually the return signal going back to it's the return signal that we use to go back into the Zoom rooms, and we're using Dante to get to the Zoom room. So all of the computers themselves have the Dante virtual sound card in them. So we're just using Dante to send that return signal back. The reason we do that is because we really want to make sure that comms are not part of the same mix as the actual show. So we almost never have comms that are going back to the Zoom room in the same mixer. It's not that the mixer can't do it. It's that we don't want to do it, because the chance, any chance of having comms go back into the event would really be terrifying for us. So, it's something you worry about. Even when you do it this way, you still worry that you're going to get comms into the video. So anyway, that's how we do it. You could literally set up a separate Dante mix if you wanted to. You know, like you could have another mixer. I mean, probably even like an XR18, something like that. That's just managing it. XR18 might be a little small. It doesn't. I don't know if it does Dante, but if you had it, you could have two X32s, for instance. One is your show, and the other one is your comms, and you could patch all that stuff together, and you could probably figure out a way. We're working on getting Unity comms kind of set up with Dante in one of the locations that we're working on. It's a little tricky as far as building that out. It's not quite as easy as the ClearComm, but the ClearComm is $60,000, and so it's a different ball of wax. And so anyway, that's how you do that. The less expensive way that we're looking at it right now for one of the locations is using Unity for all the remote producers and partners and so on and so forth, and then using Studio Technologies. I think there are 374As and Bs, or 374As. There are these Dante belt packs, and then tying those together, and then tying one of the buttons there as a talkback into the, to go back. But using Unity and Dante, mixing those together, you can also get to that point where you can talk to any individual person, but each person's getting a mix minus, and it's coming from a separate mix system that you're using, and that goes back into the return. So it's building a much more complex pipeline to do that, but it is magic. Like just so you know, like point to point, having point to point of every person that's going to be speaking, and then being able to talk to them without them having to do anything, and having all of that built into it is pretty slick. Go ahead, Grant.
So the other way of doing it is just to have all the guests in one room, and then I can just speak to them, because
you speak to them, but not one.
That's right. And if I have a real problem, then I can drag one of them out into a breakout room and talk to them there, and then throw them back in. So, but generally, if I'm just doing countdown cues and I'm queuing them, I'm queuing all the people that are on the stage. And often, if it's just a host, they're in their own breakout room, and anything I say to them is not going to program anyway. And so there's no way that my audio can go to program when I'm talking to them like that. But it's a completely different setup. Mine's very, 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 very simple, and of course there are pros and cons, But as just a simple way of a simple panel, the mix minus is handled in Zoom, and then the comms is handled because it's only my audio that's going, and it can't go to program.
Right. And so there's a couple different ways of making that work, but I will say, when you move to a professional level show, whether it's Grant's solution or my solution or other people's solutions, being able to talk back to each participant really just changes the whole show. Like it's transformative for a show. All the weird, uncomfortable things you see in Zoom events where people are trying to figure something out because something went wrong and no one can talk to, no one can, because you're all talking in public with everybody. Getting rid of that is super important to having a next level, because we have things like someone's got a bad connection. We know we have to restart it or pull it over. I can talk into the host here and go, hey, we're going to take Jim offline for a second. So just keep talking to other people. And I'm doing that while they're talking, while someone else is talking, like you can do all the coordination that you do in the room, where you take up a note or you're talking to someone's IFB or whatever. You have all of that inside of the system. And especially because it's virtual, you really have to have some way to get a hold of them, to talk to them about it, to make real-time decisions.
The text chat, the chat works very well for that as well. As in, once again, a cheaper solution, but I can do a private chat to the host, and they do a real subtle, which is they've received the chat. It's like just a little,
It's one of the reasons that that we're still moving towards building more like custom returns, so that the host not only has. What we're trying to move towards is the host not only has an IFB, but the return they get is a complex return, which has like their notes and cute questions and things. We want to send back a bunch of things to them that are specific for them, and we haven't gotten that all working yet. Mostly just figuring that out. We were going to use vMix for it, but we're not using that, or Memo Live, and both of those we just don't want to use WebRTC currently, and so we still have to figure out how to send that custom system back. Which you could do in Zoom, I imagine. You could do that as well, giving them their own little thing and have out your own windows being fed by different computers. Next question.
Yeah, I'll just note that we've got 21 now. They're still coming in, so it's a big day.
We're going to run heavy.
Yeah. Brett Dickus of Kansas City, Missouri says, who has a home viewing theater set up with Dolby Atmos? I keep doing that. If so, what's the signal flow from playback to device to speaker, Apple TV or Fire TV to AVR, seeking a lower cost AVR?
Lower cost AVR is, I think the base for what we have, for at least the system we're using for an AVR is about $600. Is about as low as I've seen one that will support that. Ours is, I think, about $1,000. We have a $1,000 Denon that we're using for it, for I think 10 discrete channels. We have Apple TV. The main thing that we're viewing it on is Apple TV to the Denon to some JBL speakers. Of course, this all changes if you're using a soundbar, which will be able to do all the work for you. So if you're doing a soundbar and you HDMI in from the Apple TV, it's going to figure out all those things for you. So the soundbar is going to be a lot less expensive. Those start at $250. I think they get to real quality at about $600, $700 for the soundbars, in my opinion. But you can start to get them for less. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, in terms of the signal flow from if you're using a standalone player like an Apple TV 4K, you want to hook it up to your either AVR or your soundbar, and then from the AVR that goes to the TV for your picture. But if you are using a TV that is Atmos, that supports Atmos and has built-in apps that can play back Atmos, you need to be able to hook up your ARC audio return channel or eARC, enhanced ARC signal back into either a soundbar or an AVR.
Yep. I think that answered the question. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Courtney. You were going to say something before we move on.
Yeah, I was just going to say the Yamaha Mix and Atmos receiver that is rated pretty high, the 98 at the top of the list there, and they make a number of them that support Atmos.
And how much are those?
I think they're around $600 or $700.
Yep, that's going to be about the ballpark for that thing. Yep, absolutely. Next question.
Okay, moving on to Peter Asado of Las Vegas. I don't want to continue beating the M1 topic, but I am curious if Alex got to play with his M1 Mini and his initial thoughts or impressions.
So I had big plans for yesterday. I was going to do some work on it and do some testing. And my son basically said, "You're not working today, are you?" I was like, "No." So I spent a whole day just hanging out with the kids. So I did not do any work yesterday at all. So which is very unusual for me. It's I usually at least fill a little bit of time with something I'm working on. So anyway, but today I'm going to actually be taking through its Zoom paces. I'm also going to put Resolve on it in the office, and so ask me again that tomorrow, because I will have noodled with it a bit by then. Go ahead.
Congratulations, Alex. That was a good day.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a great day.
They grew up way too fast, as you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're pretty assertive at this point about my work. Anyway, John.
My brother, we did a family Zoom yesterday. He's got the 13-inch laptop, and the quality of the front-facing camera looked really good and great frame rate. So I was impressed.
Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty exciting. I'm pretty sure that's going to do what I need it to do, and I think that I'm going to end up buying just an enormous number of Mac Minis at this, these M1 chips. Next question.
Lucas Herkson of Mainz. Do people in the panel have any experience with small rig magic arms and other grip accessories? They're much cheaper than the Manfrotto and other brands, and I wonder if they're any good.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Yep, love them. I've got the EVF mount, the mic mount, and the handles and the wooden handles all on the Scion behind me, and the quality is absolutely fabulous, especially for the price paid. Trivia: if the box isn't all the way full, Small Rig drops a gift in there. Now, it can be something like Chinese candies or little fluffy toys and whatever, but they just basically pack out the box so that things don't move around during transport. It's kind of cool.
That's awesome. There is a thing about sweets and things like if you buy something from Sweetwater or from B&H, you kind of expect the candies to show up. Both of them. There's like little candies in there, and the funniest ones are the B&H ones are these. It's an Israeli company that makes these. They're kind of tart and kind of sweet, and if you go to B&H, they're everywhere. They're these little bowls of them, and when you first eat them, you're like, wow, I don't know if I like these, and then you become very addicted to them, and then And then you're kind of like if you see B&H at NAB, you always walk by because you want some of the candies. You know, like it's and sometimes you end up with Whoppers and you're like, hey, wait, where's my candies? I was expecting the candies. Mickey and then Paul King.
Yeah, just commenting on that, Sweetwater, like when I'm working on a new build out, a studio build out, like I end up with like little packets of candies in my backpack.
You always want to be the person that opens the box. Oh, I'll get the box open. Paul King.
I feel cheated. I didn't get any candies with my small rig. I have a small rig super clamp that I use on this iPad. I use it as a command center. I just clamp this onto my monopod, and I love the small rig super clamp.
Yep. I use the small rig. I use the small rig clamp or the small rig ectoskeleton for my 6Ks. You know, so I have a whole bunch of the small rigs that I put on. So I have the ectoskeleton, and then I have the T5, the Samsung T5 that I use for all of them. And cost of performance is very high. You know, I put an external rig on all my Blackmagic cameras just because it just gives me a lot more. It just turns it into like a little erector set. Go ahead, Stuart.
Combining the small rig question and the M1 question, given that small rig have a design program that is really a great idea, they co-design with people gear that they want. Small rig were going to do a cage for a Mac Mini. I'm wondering if we can put some pressure on them to come up with it, because it would be absolutely fabulous and really useful, especially if the M1 Minis become as useful as they appear to be out on location for things like data wrangling and whatever, and doing dailies. They're going to be fabulous. We
use them. A lot of our rigs in the old Minis, which weren't quite as fast as we wanted them to be. I think Sonnet makes a dual 1U system thing that we use, have stacks of them, you know, of these Sonnets that are really built for the Mac Minis that we put in there, and so that's what we've used in the past. But yeah, I think having a rig that you could hook one to would be useful too. Next question.
Moving on to Michael Luke, Toronto. Question for Grant. Have you experienced presenters ending up in the host room in Zoom webinars, even though they don't have the password?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand that question as far as if they're showing up as a panelist and they don't have the password, or if they're showing up as an attendee. Either way, the registration, if they register, then you can register people as panelists, and so they can come immediately in as panelists. And so if you get a join link, that join link can bring you in directly as a panelist, and that's something that I've used in some of the shows. And so I can say I want these 10 people as panelists and register them. They get unique join links. We give them those join links. They join and they're instantly in the panel. So I don't know if that's what you're saying. If it is, those join links have the password included within them, and so as part of the URL. And so I think that's possibly what's happening. There shouldn't be any way, if they're only putting in the link with just the meeting ID and there's no extra part in the URL, they won't be able to get in if you've got passwords set. Which is one of the security features you need to have anyway. So I don't know if that helps.
Go to Angela.
Yeah, I had a gig where the host shared the host link and everybody came in with their name, and it was like 60 people coming in. It's the same name. We had to change names. It's all about who uses what link and shares with who. It's crazy.
I think I've told this story before, but we had a hangout one time. Very public hangout with a broadcaster, and we sent the broadcaster in the same email. This is the link for everyone to join the hangout. This is early on in our hangout. This is by 2012. This is the link for your guests to join the hangout. This is the link that you can tweet out. It was in the same email, and we learned never to do. The reason we never do that again is never send any multiple links to any external person. Everybody gets only the link that they need. And then above it and below it, it says, do not share this link. You know, like do not share this link. You know, this is your link. And we have, it's all because of this one show where what the broadcaster did was they tweeted the participant link, you know, for a hangout out. And I'm really glad that everyone was dressed when they showed up, you know, but it was but it was just barely because people went, oh, I'm going to go watch that show. Like you just think about all the things you do or what you're doing when you say, I'm going to go watch that. I'm going to go watch this show with my favorite influencer or whatever. I click on the button, just think of what state you're in when you do that. And people were just appearing, in there, it was just like this. And what happened was so many people were coming in that, the Hangout only holds 10. As soon as you would push them out, they'd all just pop, just new ones would pop in. It was just like this. And we just literally had to kill the whole thing and start a new event because it was like, it was never going to stop it. Because there were thousands of people that were clicking on this thing. And just, it was the most amazing fail ever. So
we did send it in separate emails, but it didn't matter. They just didn't read it at all.
It's hard. We spend a lot of time about discussing length of emails and what emails say, like there's a tendency to send really long emails that give you all the information that you want. And we try to tell people, like I tell everyone 6 lines. You got to figure out how you're going to say everything in 6 lines. Because otherwise because I know I won't read anything more than 6 lines. Go ahead, Grant.
Just 2 tips on that. One is there's a setting that allow multiple logins per person, and so we lock that down. And it's funny. I did it in one event where we had 10,000 people, and I didn't get to it until day 2, and then we had all these people that had various reasons, legitimate reasons why they should be allowed to have multiple devices. One person said to me, I can't get sound working on one device and I can't get video working on another device, so I need both of them going. My other tip on the link is if you are using the same link to all of the presenters, is to use a URL shortener, because then you have control. If it goes bad, you can quickly change the end point of that URL, and you can cut them off, and then and that way, if it goes bad. So we use Rebrandly is a free service and works awesome. It's basically Bitly, and so that's perfect for that. You can kind of change it live.
That's great. Next question.
Ash Shadev of New York City. Thanks to this panel, I started educating myself on Dolby Atmos and spent most of yesterday watching their tutorials. Not very clear if I need to purchase the Dolby Production Suite to work with Logic and Resolve. They offer a 330-day trial. Are there any other tools I need?
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I'm fairly new to working with Atmos, at least in the production sense of things. But yeah, you do need to get the production suite because in order for you to actually monitor the Atmos mix, you need the Atmos renderer, which comes with the production suite.
And I thought that for some reason, I thought that Resolve just added that. Like that's what everything is all in Resolve. You still can't. You still need that.
Yeah, you still need it. What Resolve added in is native handling of the metadata, of the panning metadata. Because previously you had to do the metadata automation with a plugin. So that's kind of like Dolby's workaround. They made this plugin that you put into your DAW, and that plugin talks to the Atmos renderer. Now that whole automation process is native built into Resolve, but you still need the renderer to be able to mix, monitor, and master in Atmos.
And there's 2 different versions. There's that production, and the cinema one is much different.
There's the mastering suite. There's the production suite, and then the mastering suite, which requires you to purchase hardware.
And that one, but you only need that one if you're doing cinema. I mean, you can do smaller productions. I don't think
you can do OTT delivery and also music delivery with the production suite. But there are some caveats, depending on the distributor, depending on what kind of master they require.
Right. Next question.
Next question comes from Victor here in the panel from Brookings, South Dakota. Ideas for getting tripods up higher, and he specifically mentions tables and boxes, and I've got a couple of thoughts.
And we'll go through this pretty quickly. Bill, then Paul, then Mickey, then Stuart.
So it depends on how high you want to get. If you build, I used to build wooden boxes to put my tripods on, but people sat on them. They were always making the camera shake. There is a device called a spider pod that is pretty expensive, but it's a metal 3-legged thing that people can't sit on, and it has an operator platform next to it. You can also get specifically tall tripods. I used to have a 17-foot tripod that I used when I really had to get over everybody and get the angle of the camera, like to a stage or something like that. Those are my go-to things.
Go ahead, Paul, and then Mickey.
Yeah, they have a tripod extender. If you go to Amazon and just type tripod extender, it can go up and down, and it'll adapt to the thread on your tripod, and then it's got another thread to add your camera or whatever device at the top.
The big thing is that the more you get away from your tripod, the more vibration will affect your camera. So as you have an extender out, it acts as, it'll vibrate, and very, very, like walking across the room will cause it to vibrate. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Stuart.
Yes, similar to what Bill was saying earlier, like it depends on how high, and also if you need it to be a permanent setup or something that you need to, build quickly and tear down quickly. There are definitely tall tripods here, especially like the Manfrotto carbon fiber ones. Those can go pretty tall. If you need something that can be set up fairly quickly, and also could really scale up in terms of height, scaffolding is an option. If you want a more permanent solution, build the grid with speed rail, as like what do you call this, Sky is working on, and then use clamps to create to mount the camera.
Yep. Stuart, and then Courtney.
Yeah, just on the tables and what have you, just avoid tables as much as possible. Someone will always try and stand on a chair to use the camera that's on a tripod that's on a table, and you will end up with somebody falling off the dang chair. If you need to lift a tripod, make sure you've got the wide feet on the bottom, not the spikes, and put it on some shipping pallets. They're nice and stable. They're flat. It keeps the weight low. And for sucking a little bit of the vibration out, because you can get dollies that will clip on the wheels of tripods if you want to move them, and with Victor doing music and there being dance floors where they play music, you can slide the tripod across the dance floor. Hang a weight, say an old lead acid battery, from the head of the tripod underneath, so it is in between the legs, and it will damp a little bit of the vibration as it moves around, but be careful with how much weight, otherwise you'll overload the tripod very quickly.
Go ahead, Courtney.
What they use in Hollywood all the time is something called a hi-hat, which is basically a very short tripod. It's just a ball leveler or something to attach your head to a piece of wood, and then that can be C-clamped to the top of any ladder. And that frequently, if you want to get up, more than 6 feet or so, we've put them on top of 12-foot, 15-foot ladders. And it also gives a stairway up to the operator so he can operate the camera 12 feet off the ground in a stable fashion. So a hi-hat with a couple of C-clamps is handy to have. And, of course, a lot of grip departments carry ladders, of course, of various heights.
Also look at, depending on what your budget is, you can get very inexpensive jibs, which will let you move around. It's kind of life-changing. So the one that we used a lot for building training materials and everything else is called an easy jib. It's a couple grand, and it's really easy to set up quickly, and you can get up over people's shoulders. And the more important thing is that it's one thing to rig the camera up high. It's another thing to have to move it. Like, I need to move it 8 inches over, or I need to move it whatever. And that becomes like a thing, that takes a half an hour for you to get it, or 15 minutes to get over. Whereas with a little jib arm, you can very quickly get over. I will say that I've experimented with some of the cheaper jibs that you can get, like $100, $150 jibs on Amazon. They're horrible. Like, it just, like they just don't work. So start thinking about the like $800 to $1,500 range as the beginning of where you're going to spend to do that. But we used an easy jib for a long time, and some of those can be kind of a head, just they pop onto a head. Anyway, so jibs can help a lot. If you're doing something that you want to have on a platform, just always remember that you should have your tripod on a different platform than the operator. that keeps the vibration way down as far as that goes, as far as any kind of foot movement and so on and so forth. Usually just an inch of space between the two. Oftentimes, if we're requesting camera risers, we'll request that they are 3 foot by 3 foot or 1 meter by 1 meter, 1 inch apart. For one for the operator, one for the, and you want to be larger for the operator so they can sit down if they want to. If you want to go absolutely crazy, this is the nth degree. Just know that it exists if you have to have it. If you're putting on a huge 90x lens and you need to throw 200 feet and you don't want it to vibrate, what you do is you drop concrete into sand. So you put a 3 foot by 3 foot piece of concrete, cube, into sand, and wrap it with 6 inches of sand all the way around it. And the way you do that is 6 inches at the bottom, drop the concrete, and then pour the rest of the sand in. And you can put that over a parking garage, just in case you're wondering, and you will not get any. And then to add a little bit to it, you add rubber to the bottom and under it, and then above it, and a lot can go on, and that camera's not going to vibrate. And so those are just something to know that it's out there. If someone asks, like, I absolutely have to have that, that's the way you do that. Stuart?
I would love to see that set up, see if it could deal with the noise from a top fuel drag car and whether the sand moves to liquefaction.
Yeah.
But one personal experience, especially dealing with things like motorsport, if the track manager puts a stand for a camera at the end of a straight, don't use it. Some idiot will drive through the sand pit and under the camera stand. Trust me, we've seen this happen in Melbourne.
Next question.
Wait a second. This is the meme version of real versus fake knockoffs. Okay. The fake knockoff is never like the real version.
Right. Exactly. Next question.
Okay. Next question. Jonas Detal of Reutlingen says, on Christmas, even I was tasked to do outside streams. Best way to protect equipment from the environment. Oh, on Christmas Eve, I was tasked to do an outside stream.
I mean, so one thing to know is that Portabrace and other folks make a lot of different bags that are really built for your cameras. So Portabrace they have a whole line of them for different kinds of cameras and so on and so forth. And the big thing is that you may want to try to do something that you do on your own, but the advantage of using something that is built for it is it has little Velcro strips where you need them and little things that you can open and pop open. And so finding one that fits your camera, it depends on what your camera is, really makes a big difference. And a lot of them will kind of bag over your lens, and then you can pull up the lens and just have the operational part being exposed. This is a place where I do use some kind of UV filter or something for my lens so that it's easy, so I don't feel bad about wiping it off all the time. But do think about lots of microfiber, not one microfiber, but lots of them, because once they're wet, they're not useful anymore. So oftentimes I'll have like a bag of them, like literally 20 of them in some kind of bag that I can, I have a dry one all the time. If I need to wipe off the front of my lens, if there's snow or so on and so forth, that's there. But I put a filter in front of it, so I'm not feeling bad about really going like this and pulling stuff off of it over my glass. Those are the big things for me. I worry less about, that's easy to cover. The thing I usually worry about is humidity. Is the thing that worries me a lot about cameras. And also remember that when you go outside, you need time for when you go inside if you're shooting, once your glass gets cold, when you go back inside, it will fog. And so going from one temperature to another is something you just have to, like, we literally will leave lenses out all night in a hot environment. Like when I was in Cambodia, we had to leave early to make sure it was literally just so the glass would warm up. So that it would stop fogging up. People, even Chris Summers talked about using hair dryers on their lenses, but I'm too superstitious to do that. I just want them to warm up on their own. I'm always afraid I'm going to lose off the recollimate. Mickey and then Sky, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I would assume for your actual switching hardware and your encoding machines, you can put that at an indoor location, just run lines to your sources, your cameras. But if the switcher and all the other equipment like that has to be outside, buy a bunch of easy up tents. Yep. Get those that are covered on all sides, not the fully open ones. Mm-hmm. Get those that have the 4 walls.
I will never work outside without a tent, ever. I will never, ever, ever. I never ever put my electronics in an open air environment, like above where the stuff above me is not covered, ever. Like ever, never, 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 ever. You know, I had one where I demanded a tent in Vegas, and I said, I'd like a tent. Now, I have to admit, I was thinking about dust and sun, and they said, well, no one else is using a tent. I said, I don't care. I'm not coming if I don't have a tent. Like I need I'll bring the tent, but I need the space for the tent, you know, to put it in there. So we built it all up, and it's one of those random storms that came through that it was as if someone had poured buckets of water out of the sky. I mean, I had never seen so much rain in Vegas ever. It did like, you know, $2 million worth of damage to all the equipment for all the people who didn't need tents. My stuff was fine. So anyway, didn't have a show. I had to do some kind of weird little show on the inside, but it was a red carpet that didn't turn out too well. Anyway, Sky.
Also cold. If you're in extreme cold, batteries do a different thing in that temperature. So talk about
batteries
that.
are like quarter effective, like at best.
There you go.
You know, like they will your batteries when they're cold will just zoom out immediately. Yeah, go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, just on the temperature thing, cables as well will get stiff and get brittle. Try to avoid using cables that, especially those that are coiled. You want to avoid those. Anything that, you know, will naturally stretch in the course of production, like just go with straight cables. If you're using a boom pole, don't use cabled boom poles. Ask me how I learned that.
All right, next question.
Stan Chan of Roseville says, what aspects or repetitiveness of a production can be augmented by automation? If a cognitive virtual assistant or AI can help a production crew in their work, what aspects of the workflow can help make this process more streamlined and scalable? In other words, one person doing the work as a crew of many.
It's never going to be as good. Well, maybe someday it will be, but it's rarely going to be as good when you do that. You know, there's just something about a good human. Now, automation can be better than an average human to do it. Like if someone's not very good at what they do, an automation may be better. There is PTZs are probably the first thing that we usually attack. It's not so much automating it; it's just magnifying a person's ability to do that. And you can get PTZs. You can also get automated PEDs. You know, for broadcast, you know, when you watch a broadcast news, there's nobody in that studio. People are just pushing buttons. And in fact, it's all pre-programmed where those cameras go and what they're, you know, set up to, and everything else all happens with like, you know, a person running one or two people running the whole thing. So those things can, you know, cameras are relatively easy to automate. A Dugan auto mix is a little bit like what you're talking about. It's constantly doing the work for you instead of you having to pan up and down. And in that case, it actually does a better job than a human. You know, so there are places, you know, for that. But those are the big places that we've seen that have been useful for that. A lot of times what I think is the best is not so much AI or automation, but magnifying different people's roles, you know, in those. And that comes down to pre-programming things so that one person can hit, you know, with a lot of events that are done with QLab or other things like that. People program it to a point where someone's just hitting the space bar. You just hit the space bar and everything happens as they hit the space bar, you know, and if everything does what it's supposed to do, you can definitely get to that point, but it doesn't get rid of the work. It just gets rid of the work during the show. You know, like usually there's an enormous amount of work to kind of pre-program that and get it all ready to go to make that happen. Any other comments about that? Yeah, go ahead, John.
I would think that they could nail captions and translations one day in the future, maybe however long.
Translations, yes. Captions are hard. Captions are hard because of bad audio, primarily. Is that room audio with the reverberance tends to be hard for the AI to really understand. And then there's all these different accents and the way people talk and how they do those things. There's a lot of filtering a human does. Now, once that caption has been created, the English captions, Google does a really good job of converting those. We've used it, use services that will use the Google Translate to just basically, they go through the API and just give us all the languages. The thing to know is that they're never quite right. You know, like, and that happens even with a human being, is that you just always have to know, you have to always tell clients that a translation is a translation and different people will have an opinion about it, you know, and there can be two versions of a translation. We had one where, well, there was two different ways to describe it, and one wasn't described very well, and that's the one we ended up using. By, and a lot of it has to do with, like with some people that they have their own translators that do it all the time, and you just want to find a way to use them, for that, because they know what that person meant. And so that is but it's a tricky part. But that first caption is easy, but you just have to always manage your client's expectations that captions aren't always going to be accurate, but more importantly, translations are never going to be fully accurate. And well, they're going to be accurate, but not everyone's going to agree on what that meant, especially when done in real time. Go, Guy.
Yeah, a couple months ago, before the pandemic, I got this request from a local nonprofit, and they wanted to do a 24-hour reading of the Mueller report. So reading this whole, I don't know if you remember that report, it was thick. So 24 hours. And they wanted it switched between a couple cameras. I'm like, no operator is going to sit there. So we came up with this idea, which was to use this switcher that has auto switching built in, and you can change the type. And one of the scan sequences is random. So we just went ahead and just let this thing switch all night long, 24 hours. And it just went from wide shot to close up and then to the report and just back and forth all night long. And nobody really noticed. It just went on.
Good.
So for a free gig, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Next question.
Ash Yadev of New York City says, would Mickey and others recommend from plugins? What would Mickey and others, I think, recommend plugins from WLM besides Waves for recording music, vocal, and drums, or drums? They have a good sale on right now too.
Yeah. Ash might have had that the other way around. The plugin manufacturer is called Waves, and like the plugin that we use is called WLM. But yeah, for music, vocals, and drums, this is a whole second hour on its own. But I would probably start with the G channel and the E channel from Waves. Those are emulations from SSL boards. So I would probably start looking there. I'm also a big fan of all the Renaissance plugins from Waves. Those are pretty simple, but very reliable, very consistent. In terms of verbs, I would look at the H verb and H delay, and also true verb, of course, and the R verb, Renaissance verb. But all in all, like I mentioned in the chat earlier that I would just go ahead and get the Horizon bundle from Waves, because right now it's 93% off, and that's a no-brainer. Just
that's
get it. 93% off. Come on.
Yeah. Next question.
Oh, another thing. Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
The CLA bundle as well. I like those if I have to work fast.
So basically, all the above. That's what you're saying. It's just all the above. Just buy as many as you can afford.
Exactly.
Next question.
Rich Gilpin of Olympia says, where to purchase room audio treatment panels?
I order mine off of Amazon. I buy Sonics. I buy 2-foot by 4-foot Sonics panels. I think I do the 3-inch deep ones is my typical purchase. Now you can also get moving blankets, which are what I have right now in my house, because my wife won't let me put staple Sonics to my walls. But outside of those are the two. But I've gotten pretty much everything that I've gotten for a long time. If I'm not making them myself, I get them off of Amazon. Go ahead, Bill.
And Sonics is a premium distributor. You can be sure those will be quality. I do think that people can press any kind of foam into that shape and put it on Amazon cheap. So the good acoustic people will have some sort of metrics. They'll show you some waveforms and what it absorbs and what it doesn't and how it reflects.
Just make sure that you pay attention to the fire rating. You have something that's
hugely
could potentially be Sonics is fire rated, so it's not going to never burn, but it's going to take a lot to do it, and you don't want something to accidentally go into your wall and light up the whole building. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would second getting stuff from Amazon or directly from the manufacturer, like RLX. You can buy it directly from them, and if you need custom-made stuff like specific dimensions, they can do it for you as well.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead, Paul King.
Rich, if you ever get to Tacoma, the guitar centers have a cool audio room where you can physically go in and look at some of the audio treatment stuff. So if you want to physically go and see it, Guitar Center is a cool spot to check out.
Do it sooner than later.
Yeah, they're in chapter 11, aren't they? Or chapter 7?
Yeah, they're closing several stores down.
Yeah. So good time. Probably find some sales too. All right, next question.
Moving on to John Pruitt and the panel in Huntersville, North Carolina. AWS versus Azure versus Google Cloud, panel opinion.
I use AWS just because I know it. I don't know. I don't know if I have a strong opinion about which one is better. I just know that that's the one that and it's partially because of the links and partially because of what our company's done. But I think they all have their advantages and disadvantages. So John Preto and then John Pruitt.
I've been on AWS since the very, very beginning. I got rid of 2 giant server farms, East Coast, West Coast, went to AWS. AWS is the leader by far. And then Microsoft product is second. And then the Google Cloud product. I'm not a fan of the Google Cloud product, AWS, but AWS can be really, really expensive. You got to be careful.
Yeah. John?
No, I just wanted to get the panel's opinion on this since we're moving a lot of our production into the cloud and see what you guys were using. I don't think we have enough time left to really get into a decent conversation on this, but I just wanted to throw that out there. AWS is, I think if you're using Windows, Azure is where you want to go. And if you're open to other platforms, AWS seems to be where you're hit.
I literally, other than people that actually work on the Azure product, I literally don't know anybody in my environment that doesn't use AWS. It's literally, so part of my whole thing is I have no support if I go somewhere else, because literally every single person that I know that does live streaming that uses the cloud is using, other than the people that are working in Azure, are working in AWS. So that's the only thing else. And they bought Elemental, so there's a lot of Elemental tools that are kind of getting slowly, added to it, which makes it also something that I'm more comfortable with. Anyway, so that's probably the number one reason is community. Next question.
Paul Wallace of Austin, Texas. What's the best macro routine for Zoom? For example, I want to hit one keystroke to unmute and switch cams.
I guess I would say that I just see a lot of people having trouble unmuting all the time. So I usually assume that there's a macro in there somewhere. So anyway, so that's kind of my my only opinion about that, is just make sure it actually works. I don't have any certain. Yeah, go ahead, John Preto, and then Guy.
Paul, most people are using Stream Deck. Fenwick uses it. Leland uses it. Colin uses it. So check out the Stream Deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead, Guy.
Same thing. Look, the mute works.
It does for you, but there's just oftentimes there's these extra pauses all the time, and I what's going on in the back of my head is that somebody's using some kind of a keystroke or an automation, because literally if I mute, I'm literally clicking on the mic button every single time just because I know that it's there. Go ahead, John Pruitt.
My reason for not hitting the mute button is because I have to figure out which of the 45 screens I've got my mouse cursor on.
Yep. Next question.
Ashadev says, I've got the new Portal Mini as recommended here, was on a family Zoom call last night, and there was no option to join rooms that were set up. Is there a way to join rooms as a participant?
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, so when the rooms first came out, there wasn't the ability to join a breakout room with the Zoom rooms, the big ones. So they did an update a week ago and they implemented that code. So it's just a matter of time before they move it over to the Portal Mini and the collaboration devices. So stay tuned. I'm sure it'll come soon.
Coming soon. Next question.
Angela Eisenman wants to do the religious argument, Premiere versus Final Cut Pro, and go.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Resolve.
Yeah. Go ahead, John Pruitt. John Preto, I mean.
You said Resolve? You're a big Edius guy, I thought. I was on Premiere for 15 years or so.
17 years, Edius, yes, now Resolve.
Good.
And I moved to Resolved, and I never looked back. Premiere just crashes way too often.
Good, Sky.
Sony Vegas. No, I won't do that. Again, it's what tool you can afford. What it's a Phillips screwdriver or a flathead screwdriver. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. It's just whichever tool you know how to use.
I think that what I'll say is that I've been using Final Cut for 20 years. I'm now using Resolve for some things. For things that I needed to go fast and I need to throw something together and I want to be creative and I just want to have fun and just knock it out. And I need it to just kind of work. I still use Final Cut because Resolve takes a little bit more setup and it's easier for me to really screw things up in Resolve than it is in Final Cut. So if I'm just rocking along, I use Final Cut. If I'm not going to use Final Cut, I don't see where Avid or Premiere fit into the future. Like, so I just don't.
Oh yeah,
I think so. So as I look down the future, what I look at is more and more production companies picking up Resolve, to do the heavier lifting. It's a much more technical application than Premiere or Avid. I mean, it's very deep. It is evolving faster than everybody else. There is so much. So we're seeing updates much faster than everyone else. And the last update had 300 additions. Yeah. I am straddling Final Cut and Motion because I think that Motion and Final Cut, from a production perspective or productivity perspective, are higher. And so if I was going to tell an educator, when educators ask me what should I use, I immediately say Final. If they're not going to use iMovie, you should first use Keynote, then use iMovie or Final Cut, and for most of them, just jump to Final Cut if you can afford it. And then use Motion for all of your like higher end animations that you want to do, especially now with USDZ and 3D solutions and so on and so forth. So I think that there's a place for both Final Cut and Resolve. I don't see where there's a place for Premiere and Avid in the future. I just think that it's old code. It's $50. I mean, it's like some kind of crazy $30 or $50 a month. When you buy Final Cut,
19 for students.
Yeah, but if you buy Final Cut and Resolve, each one are $300. And then there's no updates. Like you're in the club forever, And so I think that from a pure from a pure math perspective in a production company, I don't see how that pencils out, for everyone else. And so that's my opinion. Go ahead, Bill.
So yes, and
yeah.
For me, it's the subscription model. And I have a particular problem with a particular kind of subscription model, and that is the auto charge that you don't have control over, particularly if you push it off to yearly. Because if I get hit by a car tomorrow and I'm on a subscription thing, my wife keeps paying that subscription automatically without doing anything. And if she's on a year, if she doesn't kill it on the date of the year, it charges automatically for another year. And I just think that's a terrible business model. So I don't care whether it's Premiere or any other software that puts you on a subscription like that. I hate those type of subscriptions.
My issue with the subscription model is less about the money and more about the fact that they've now gotten into this thing where they want you to do a 2-part verification where the 2-part verification doesn't actually work. And so I got locked out of After Effects twice last month. Where it just said, it was a new computer or whatever, but I deregistered. I'm registering on a new computer. It says, we'll send you an email. It'll come in a couple minutes. I'm in production. And then it never came. Like it never came. Like the way to get into the app, and it won't let me run the app. I am a paying customer, like for real money, that can't use the app in production. And at that moment, I was like, I'm getting rid of all my Adobe. I'm like literally will not, like I am every day now. I am focused on getting Adobe out of my computer because and it's not about the money. It's not about the subscription. It's not about even the features. It's about this one thing is that if I'm in production and I go to a new computer, I need to know that it's going to work the moment I install it. Not this like weird, like I'm going to do 2-part verification. Whoever thought that up should be fired. Like in Adobe, because they should be fired, they should be sued, they should be incarcerated. We're production people. This is literally taken me from. I mean, I've used After Effects since it was COSA. I've used Photoshop since 1.5, and if you take a person like me, actively trying to get rid of your software, that is a horrible thing. As someone who just built my entire career on Adobe products, and now I'm doing everything I can to get rid of them. And it has nothing to do with the money. It has to do with I got locked out of a production, and now it's not a safe. Like my entire thing is their pipeline is not safe. Like it's not a safe pipeline for production. If I'm going to get locked out of that system and have no way to get back in, because then I was kept on trying to get it working, and then it locked me out and said, no, now we're going to put you on a timer because you didn't get the ones, you didn't get it right. I was like, these people are crazy, and so that's the problem that Adobe has right now for me. And I will flat out say I won't use it. I mean, I still have a copy of After Effects and I still have Photoshop for now, but I use Affinity Photo until I can't use it. And then I go back to Photoshop because it doesn't have some little feature. And then I send the guys at Affinity Photo an email like, hey, I couldn't do this in Affinity. I had to go back to Photoshop. Please fix this. And I explain it. They get a long email. Go ahead, Stuart. And then Courtney.
Just to thank you for both you and Bill for those comments, because I'm having a real I told you so moment right now for some of the people I was talking to when Creative Cloud started. Yes, Premiere has always crashed. As far back as the late 90s, Premiere crashed. So that's the reason I went from Premiere to Edius. But just if you're stuck with Premiere and Final Cut being your only two choices, ask this question. Which one's servers have been hacked the most? And I think you'll go with the Apple product instead.
Yeah, Courtney?
Yeah, I've always hated Adobe's digital rights management. That's why I still use Photoshop 7.1 because it never phones home. You can put it on as many machines you want. I purchased it, I purchased the full thing. But the solution is a dongle to most of those high-end editing programs. That way you can move it easily between computers and not worry about two-part, verification to get it unlocked.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just. So yeah, and my thing is I don't need the dongle with the other ones. I just install them, and the fact that Resolve now comes with, I just bought a bunch of Blackmagic cameras and now I have lots of Resolve. And again, I think that the way that Blackmagic is doing it, I just think that it's a 2-horse race. And I don't think that they have to ever, I think that Final Cut and Resolve on a Mac platform, Final Cut and Resolve sit very nicely next to each other, and you use both of them. I just don't understand why I would use the other ones. Go ahead, Angela, and then Stuart.
Yeah, I mean, I started on Premiere on version, I believe 4. I remember like the update for 5, and then went to Final Cut. And when it hit Final Cut 10, we went back to Adobe and Premiere, and then we've just been stuck because of the subscription, because of the whole suite, and it's just the full package. But yeah, the crashing has been crazy, or the weirdness has just been. And
to be fair, now it may be the way I'm using Resolve. I crash Resolve about once a day, so I save a lot because I thump. Resolve goes into this thing where I get the long beach ball and I go, oh no, it's gonna leave now. So it's I'm used to it. I mean, I Final Cut I might crash once a month. But I'll crash Resolve once a day when I'm doing work on it. And it may just, again, be what I'm asking it to do, but it's really complex color and, lots of big files and stuff like that. But it is, so it's not that it's perfect. It's just that for $300, it's a lot of tool. Stuart?
I've got to ask Angela, CS4 or Premiere 4? Because Premiere 5 was the version of Premiere 4 that crashed less. And John Preto, the dongle is the reason why I don't use Edius anymore, because Edius went away from a dongle to a online activation mode that you've got to dial into to start the program. It's like, nope, sorry, not interested. I'll get Resolve instead.
It was Premiere 4 back in 97.
Yeah. Yeah,
I have an iOmega Buzz machine right there that has Premiere 5 from doing weddings at that time. So I know your pain.
I will say that the funny thing about piracy in general is that big companies don't want to get sued, and you're only one angry employee away from being sued. And so all this piracy protection is crazy because you want people, like 3D Studio and Maya, for instance, is a good example of things that were just hugely hacked all the time. Everyone had a copy because it was, and Photoshop, was an easy one. And they basically took over the market. And the ones that were really good at Electric Image, which I, used for a decade, was probably the best at protecting their software. They're not around anymore. And I think that's that there's a piracy thing that, a misnomer, I would say, that it doesn't. And again, Apple solved a lot of that by making it so it's really hard to pirate software that comes out of the app stores. And as a result, our costs have gone down because you're not accounting for that as a software developer. John and then Bill.
Two quick things, Alex. What are the Knoll brothers using these days for their work? And in the old days, I think Courtney would like this. I still program in assembly, and every time we had a dongle, we would go disassemble the code, and we could see where the code would talk to the dongle, and we would just put a jump code over the top of it and kill every dongle. It was great.
Yeah, we did that with Electric Image too. Get it on an extra computer. Go ahead, Bill.
One of my eye-opening moments with the subscription thing that caused me to be so angry about it was that I actually went into my bank manager and said, I'm sick and tired of getting hit for this thing. I do not want to use it. They are double charging me for a lot of complex reasons. Can you please stop this? And she looked at me and she said, no, I can't. I said, what do you mean? This is my bank account. Stop letting these charges go through. She said, no, I can't. What do you mean? She said, read your contract. You must go to binding arbitration. I can't turn it off. The bank is not a party to this contract. Only you and the vendor are parties to this contract. We can't do anything about stopping this charge for you. And I just said, I'm out of here.
Yeah, I've had ones where I got caught into that thing and I just closed the account. I was just like, we'll close that account out. Anyway, next question.
I think this question was handled earlier. It's Ryan Yellen's about Rwanda. Working your need is what you need for your work with your students. And so I think Sky got that pretty much taken care of.
Yep. Next question.
Okay. Paul King, any hot tips for more comfortable earpiece listen-only fit?
Well, there's always custom, and and I can hear myself back just a little bit when I'm talking to you. So you might want to, until you talk, so the earpiece will be useful for you. I think that I actually find these autos to be the some of the most comfortable ones. Just these little earpieces here that go in for IFB. But as far as at any price, I think I hear that the Bumblebee is a pretty comfortable solution. But I haven't tried it yet. I haven't decided to spend money in that direction at the moment because I have so many earpieces that I'm like, should I really spend more money on another headset? Go ahead, Stuart.
For Paul, the absolute perfection in comfort is to investigate thermoset plastics. So you take a mold of your ear with some wax and make a shape that matches your ear perfectly. It will never rub, it'll never chafe. You've just got to make sure you mount the speaker on it properly.
Go ahead, John.
None of the in-ears fit in my ears. I got really small ear canals for some reason. I can't get any of those in, even the smallest ones. And Sky and I both ordered the free box from Audio Implements, and they send you that kit out to do customs.
Yep. Yeah, you can, and it's a free box because you're going to order them. Obviously, you'll order them later, but yeah, you can do it on your own. You can also go to an audiologist. I think is that did I say that right? Audiologist. There's a lot of people who do those custom fittings in every major market for people who are wearing hearing aids, and so that's another place to go. It's not necessarily the least expensive way to go, but it's not particularly expensive either for them to do a mold for you, and then they'll do the mold, and then you can send it in, and then someone will send you a piece. So those are if you have a really hard to fit ear, those are the things to do. And then with Audio Implements, I just have this one that's looks like we call it the Christmas tree. It's like a little Christmas tree there that just kind of I will say it mostly is just practice of getting used to it being in your ear. It was horribly uncomfortable for, the first 100 hours that I had it in, which was, 10 years ago. I just wear it a lot. So you get used to it and you get callous to it and your brain learns to filter out that feeling. So I wouldn't necessarily, that's the other part of it, is just doing it as part of the challenge. When I put a new in-ear in, I have to go through the whole process again of getting used to something else bothering my ear. So, next question.
Ashadev, New York City. For Atmos audio, how is the Amazon Echo Studio? Do I stick with the HomePod? By the way, the AirPod Pros with spatial audio when paired with an Apple TV are amazing.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I haven't tried the Atmos on the AirPod Echo. I don't know what the value is. I don't think that, I guess from a trajectory perspective, I don't think that Amazon's going to do the same amount of work for quality as Apple will. So if I already had HomePods, I would probably keep going down that path just because I don't think Amazon's going to step up, or Google, will step up and push that outer envelope. They're more into how will you average people use it, as opposed to that, the pushing the outer envelope of that. And I think Apple's just beginning to push the envelope. Next question.
Moving to Rupert McRae of Dallas, Texas. Can anyone recommend a good LED light bulb, brand and type, for video in standard light fixtures when video lighting is not practical? Most reliable for color temperature, least flicker, dimmable. Trying to stay away from smart bulbs. Would CFL be better?
Stuart?
I'm always a little concerned about people using CFL and any fluoro tube in a bulb that's being moved around, because those things are really fragile.
Mm-hmm.
And if you break them, some nasty stuff comes out. I'm using lights that are available at a hardware store at the moment, Osram, and Leadvance and what have you, and I kind of like them. I haven't been able to see flicker yet, and I've pointed a GoPro at it at 120 frames, and it still looks good.
Guy? And then Steve.
These just came out, the Aputure B7C. And so it's a screw-in light bulb that also has a battery in it, and it has controls on it, so you can change the colors. And then there's an app that you can do it with too, but it screws into a regular socket. So
that is
kind of a cool light.
How much is it?
$79, I believe.
That's genius.
What was the
That's
name?
really cool.
Yeah. Aputure B7C. I'll put a link in
Is
the
it
chat.
Aputure or Aputure? Because there's two companies.
Aputure. APU.
APU.
Yeah, they're the ones who do things like the COB lights at 100, 300, and 600 watts equivalent. They are amazing on film.
Yeah.
They are really good value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really cool.
I was going to mention the Aputure, but also the LifeX and the Philips Hues are really good lights to put into fixtures and get all kind of color effects with those as well.
I've had a lot of trouble setting up the LifeX ones. I tried, for an office, and I put them in, and it would just.
Yeah, it is a little tweaky. It's their software is not quite there.
Not quite there. Yeah. So it was just that's the only thing.
Intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And what are those, Angela?
Absolutely nothing special. It came with a house. So that's why I'm curious on what those other bulbs are. I'm yeah, that row would be perfect to play with at this angle.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul King.
I think this was brought up in a previous Mucana link somewhere. These are the Philips 150 daylight dimmable. It's like $10 at Home Depot, and they work really well just to have around.
I did get, there was one point where I literally did my entire office in my house with all hues. At the time I was able to, it was actually a business cost because we were doing some tests for something, so I didn't have to pay for them myself, but I did it. And I will say that it was kind of magical. Like when you actually put them all in, and fortunately the prices for a lot of the stuff is starting to come down, but it was like you had an app and you could just jump whole fields and looks and everything else all over the place, and just create different zones and everything else. So it is a fun place to play. And again, the Philips I think what I would consider kind of the entry level, and then I really want to play with those apertures, because that looks like it could solve a bunch of problems for us. So anyway, so that kind of interested in how I could control those remotely, whether like that through an app, locally, so it's an interesting thing. Next question.
John Rainbow in Granby says, suggestions for a reliable portable time machine disk. That's the backup Apple utility. Note after an upgrade to Big Sur.
Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, portable, reliable, little T5s. And I think you can get them up to 2 terabytes.
Yeah, and the T7s are good for general purpose. I just want to say, I push them, I don't use them for, I have a T7 connected to this computer that holds a lot of my data. It's not the only place that data lives, but it's convenient and relatively fast. It's just sustained. What it doesn't handle very well is sustained high volume copies, is where it kind of falls apart. For some reason, it's the way the cache works, I believe. Stuart, and then Bill.
I was just noticing the color of Mickey's T5, and I was going to ask if they come in large blue boxes that are powered by a black hole, and I'll wait for people to get the reference.
Go ahead,
Thank
Bill.
you, Benjamin.
So the Apple Time Machine thing is an incremental backup that you start, and the only thing I'd watch out for when using it with an SSD drive is that if it fills up, it starts auto jettisoning the older. It's an incremental backup. It's not going to completely overwrite things, but if you do a lot of high volume work, watch out because you could be losing old stuff as you're adding new stuff. I tend to do my Time Machine backups to spinning hard drives, and then when they get 80% full, just retire them and add a different one.
Next question.
Moving on to Benjamin from here in the panel, San Carlos, California, starting a school musical, Chicago, in the coming weeks, and will have limited access to theater space. I'm thinking of recording vocals in a makeshift recording studio and then recording dance numbers on stage with the recorded track in the background for sync. Thoughts? That's pretty much the music video production model.
Yeah, I think that could totally work. I think I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work as far as isolated. It'll definitely be easier to do the theater part. It's just a matter of getting it just right. But I think that could work. Good, Benjamin.
Yeah. The other thing too is just with everyone wearing masks on stage, I think the audio sync will be a piece of cake. I'm frankly very excited.
Hey, finally a plus to COVID.
I wouldn't maybe not go that far, but at least certainly an advantage of wearing masks everywhere.
That'll definitely make it easier. Good, Courtney.
You could put little green masks on them, and then later you could key in little moving mouths.
There you go. Little.
But I was going to say, use time code broadcast wave file when you record them, and that way, when you play it back, have a reference that you can shoot so that you can sync everything back up again to the frame.
Yeah, it seems like it could be theoretically a good job because the other thing to remember is that you kind of want to be able to have it auto run, but also be able to interrupt. So a QLab is kind of like could be a really good solution for adding into that pipeline. Being able to have it jump from whether it's scene to scene or act to act, but being able to stop it, or reroute it so that it's not one continuous piece that goes all the way through. Although that makes the time code harder, so you just want to make sure that you have it all tied together. We just did a bunch of stuff that we just had one long piece, and it works pretty well. But people, like, if something's not going right, you just want to have some way to interrupt it. Is the issue? That's the problem we had. Is we had something going wrong 20 minutes into a 40-minute piece, and they recovered, but it wasn't. I realized that I really wish that had been on a couple different tracks rather than one track to make all of that work. Go ahead, Mickey, and then Bill.
Yeah, for music video productions, we typically run for the playback system. We typically run a DAW. We have one track that's the actual music track, and then another track that is just like LTC timecode as audio that runs at the same time, and that goes out and from a multi-channel interface. One goes to the speaker system, playback system, and also like a reference track that gets recorded on cam. And then the LTC output, the audio output, gets fed into the camera's TC input, and also like the slate, so that you get TC on the slate and every other device that needs a TC feed. So you can just lay down markers, cue markers, start anywhere in the track where you want to for each take, and the TC and also the audio, the music will run at the same time.
Yep, that's great. Bill?
The one thing I would say is to make sure that they're also singing out, because part of, in a school circumstance, what you're trying to teach performers on stage is how difficult it is to be physically dancing and singing at the same time. It takes extraordinary breath control and conditioning, and these people who are learning to do that will be building their chops in that space too. So even if you won't hear it, have them sing out.
Go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah, we're under interesting COVID restrictions where singing is one of the few activities we're not allowed to do on campus. Which
go.
Otherwise, Bill totally would take that suggestion, especially because it probably help with pacing as well.
Yeah, I didn't think about that, but that makes sense. So maybe tell them one-on-one, for every hour you spend on stage not singing for the COVID thing, you have to spend that at home singing out full to develop your voice.
Next question.
Moving on to James Babbitt in San Diego. Once the Sony A7 is live streaming to the internet with an LTE router, what's the best way to bring the camera into a Zoom meeting? Could you directly join a Zoom meeting via LTE, or would you need to connect the camera to a Mac and then connect the Mac via LTE to the internet?
I don't know if you need a Mac, but I think you need some kind of computer that's going to join. I think that's you would need, again, we've seen Eric Hall kind of experimenting with a Raspberry Pi. I think there's probably some way to build some system that would let you do it, but a Mac might be the easiest way. Remember, there's going to be a lot of delays, so you're going to be using that camera to serve video to the event, but you probably wouldn't have a comfortable two-way conversation using that camera in that way. RTMP, if you're streaming, it depends on how the connection is working. But if you're streaming over cellular, you're going to have some delay. So it's something like, hey, we're going to throw to this, and then we're all watching it together. That could work. If you're trying to get something that we're going to actually like talk to the person over it, I don't know if that would work as well. Since no one else is raising their hand, next question.
Moving on to Tony Mobley of Newman, Georgia. What's the best way to have two separate devices in the same Zoom meeting without feedback? Two participants, both with headphones. That has not worked in the past for him. So Tony's not here today. Oh, he is. He's down there in the bottom of my screen. So Tony,
can you explain that, Tony?
So, as I shared with you guys in the past, I'm working with a small church. And we have occasions where there are two people in the same household, and even when they are separated, there's still feedback. And so I was just wondering, is there a solution, other than someone actually maybe having to go outside, not to have the feedback?
Well, number one is headphones. I mean, everyone should always wear headphones. And number two is aggressive muting. So that's, like when we're like literally I hate speakerphones. So I mean, the passion. And I think that the devil created speakerphones to slow the human race down, the progress of the human race. I mean, I think it's just the horrible, horrible idea. And so in my company, if you're in a meeting, if there's four of us sitting around a table, we're all on individual calls. I won't let anyone use the speakerphone unless it's like an emergency or something's coming apart and we just need to turn something on. We'll all be in the same room around the same table with four mics. It's just that what we've gotten really good at is one person talks and everyone unmutes and mutes only when they're talking. And they just mute. And you can tell anyone that's been in a lot of conference calls, you get really, really good at it. And you just pop it open and talk and then pop it and close. And everyone should do that anyway. But we do it with three or four people in the same room back in the days when we were in the same room. But so it's teaching people, some of it's wetware, some of it's hardware, make sure everyone's got headsets on, but you'll still hear two mics. So the other thing is teaching the people that are there to always mute and unmute, is the key to the operation, and if they're aggressive about that and then they have headphones on, you're not going to have any issues. Like that'll solve the problem immediately. If they don't want to do that, they're going to continue to have echo, and then that's going to be a lesson.
Yeah, part of my drama is that I'm dealing with older people who are even older than me. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, but it is a new skill that has to be learned, and that aggressive muting and unmuting is the only way you're going to be able to get it done in the end, because you're still going to have two mics open at the same time from the same place. So you may not have echo, but you will have like some doubling because they'll be out of phase. Paul and then Courtney.
Yeah, I've had this issue, maybe the panel can expand on it a little bit, where even if you have headphones in, having two devices in the same Zoom meeting in the same household, there's this nasty screeching. Even with headphones in, muted and unmuted, it's the worst sound ever. So has anyone found a solution for that?
There shouldn't be. If both of them are coming through headphones, that screeching is a feedback loop. It means that one's picking up the other one. It could mean that the headphones are too loud. So if the headphones are too loud and they're leaking, they could create that feedback loop because it's just enough for the mic to pick it up. That's all it needs to. It just needs a little bit to grab onto, and it'll get exciting real quick.
Yeah,
so but it might be just turning the headphones down a little bit if that's the case. Courtney, and then John.
Well, if you have the budget, either Sound Devices has a very good auto mix, and the Zoom F6 has a pretty decent auto mix with multiple inputs, and you could feed them through that. But that would be going through the same interface if they're on different accounts. But maybe I was just wondering if Zoom actually uses your IP address to do echo cancellation, and that may be why.
No.
If you're going to one IP address, they're getting the same level from the same IP address, so it's not muting.
It's just those mics and speakers are too close to each other. Go ahead, John.
So we had this yesterday. I had 3 connections all in the same room, and everybody muted that wasn't talking, and we all had headphones on. It worked perfect.
Yeah, it's headphones and muting are going to solve that problem. Next question.
Moving to Angela Eiserman again. How do you stop static electric shocks in headphones? You shouldn't be getting them as a ground lifted somewhere.
No, it depends on the room. Do you have carpet? You carpeted floors?
No, I have wood floors,
really.
But I've been getting it 3-4 times on this call.
Oh, interesting. John Pruitt.
Wow.
So if you're having it while you're talking on the call, find something metal and a coin and tap the metal with the coin, and that will tend to discharge you. Just do it periodically and it'll do it. I prefer using a water faucet if it's nearby because that's grounded very solidly. I learned that while working on hard drives. Ground yourself before opening up a computer. But if you find something metal that is grounded to your house, tap that with a coin and it will ground you. Just do it periodically if you're building up a charge.
And what are you joining with, Angela?
It's a Unity push to talk. It's like the $50 version of their headset.
And what device are you using to join us with?
It's a MacBook Pro.
MacBook Pro, and that MacBook Pro is getting power from USB-C.
USB-C.
And that USB-C. And that USB-C is 2-prong or 3-prong? The power is it the 2-prong adapter?
The 2-prong.
What?
2.
2. So your power supply is not grounded, and so you're going to build up a charge. There should be a cable that came with that, or that you can get that has it's the standard NEMA 15. And if you plug that into your power, if you plug that into your power strip, and your power strip is a NEMA 15 that plugs into your wall, and your building and your house is properly wired, you will probably not have the problem you're having. It's that your hardware is not grounded all the way through, and so that charge is gonna keep on showing up. And especially if it's happening to you are you getting it when you take things away and put it back in, or you're just getting shocked sitting here?
It's just sitting here. When I move my chair, sometimes it'll happen, and it goes right into the eardrum too.
When you touch the top of your Mac Pro, just on the 2 flat sides on either side of your trackpad, does it feel a little like it's vibrating? Like it feels not quite. Just rub it, and does it feel like your fingers are kind of floating slightly on top of the metal? Unplug it. Okay, no. Here, unplug your MacBook and see if it feels any different. Now feel the metal. Does it feel any different than it did before? Okay, and it happens more when I'm overseas. So because my adapters oftentimes don't ground. If you get an adapter for international, and I plug them in, and especially at 240 volts or 220 or whatever, it'll feel like my hands are actually floating on top of my Mac just a little bit, and it's because it's not grounded and there's a lot of voltage. And when I worked in Africa a lot, it would actually, there were a dark spot where one of my hands was, and I realized that it was like slowly taking my skin off, and making it part of the metal. And so but you do, it's generally fine. But if you're getting shocked all the time, I think that it's a relationship related to not having everything grounded, and that voltage wanting to pick up. You're building up an ungrounded voltage. That's my guess.
My strip has the grounding, but yeah, the plug to the
But
strip
if you only have 2 prongs on the AC, you're not grounding your connection to that. And for most of us, it won't matter. It's an interrelationship between where you're sitting, what else is going on, the floor, your shoes, all the other things can build up this little issue. But if you're getting shocked, especially when you're not putting it in new or you're not moving around, the first thing I would do is get that NEMA 15 and plug it in and just see if it happens again. I bet you 95% chance it goes away.
I have an old one that I can switch out.
Yep, just pull that thing out and put the old one in. You should be good to go. Stuart and then Courtney.
Yeah, just a couple of points. The method that John mentioned before is fine if it is static electricity. If it's a potential earth lift, which is what follows with Alex's description there, you can actually get a bigger shock. So do make sure your house has earth sensing safety switches, excuse me. One other thing is, and this will sound weird, and yeah, it depends on what you're wearing as well. If you're wearing a plastic fiber, like for a shirt, or a wool, you can build up static electricity. My mother was exceptional at that, passing static shocks down through multiple people across carpet. It was ridiculous. So try to stick to something like cotton and what have you, and you will get less of that, especially where your cable is running across your shirt and it might rub as you move.
Polyester bad.
If you in my family, when you grew up, if you ever saw one of my brothers or sisters shuffling, you knew that you were in trouble. Because they were shuffling along the carpet and they're building up a charge. And then the typical thing was that they just come up and put their finger right next to your ear. That was usually the one where we tap someone on the right in the ear and just shock them in the ear. That was a big at any family get together. I mean, like Alex, literally would happen for hours to each other.
You might not know, but it takes 1,000 volts to jump 1 inch through air when the air has average humidity.
Yeah.
So if you can jump a spark, like the width of your thumb, it's a damn high voltage.
It's a clean show. Courtney.
Yeah, Stuart just covered most of what I was going to say. That stay away from polyester and wool, which you're wearing a sweater now. That could be part of the problem. And there's a thing they make in electronic stores, and you can find them online. It's a grounding strap. It's a strap that goes around your wrist. It has a conductive, stretchy cable that you connect to a ground. You can plug something into the ground pin on your outlet strip and ground yourself that way, and that will send the discharge through the grounding strap, and then you won't be able to build up a charge through any static charge. And this won't help you if the problem is, as Alex said, AC line current leaking into the surface and the electronics of your machine.
Bill?
And I found it mostly in the winter. I get those little shocks because the air gets drier often in the winter, so humidity sometimes matches. But I do know that when I was learning from the electricians on set, that if there's any chance anything is carrying current, particularly wall voltage or above, you always touch it with the back of your hand, never the front, because if you get current, you will grab on and you will not let go, and you will have big problems. And so will anybody who tries to grab you to pull you off of that thing. This is when the flying tackle is very important.
Go ahead. John Pruitt is showing the grounding.
There we go.
And so that's a ground strap.
Yeah, and one of the reasons why I recommended a coin is so you wouldn't feel the shock. The coin will be, it's the gap that causes the pain, the spark. So if you're holding the coin, it will do the spark and not your flesh.
I remember getting the throwaway version of those.
I'm going to interrupt, Sky. That can still lead to the charge and the current running through. So it's very important of which direction it goes through the body. So even with a coin, if it's static, you're fine. But if it's earth lift, Take care. Sorry, Sky.
We've taken a very simple question and blown it up into it. We wandered around. The only thing last I'll say is it also depends on your shoes, of what you're wearing. I once had a situation. I had worked on the fence, electric. We had a lot of electric fences, horses and stuff like that. And my father said my father was like, my father is a lawyer. He's not. He doesn't do electric. Like it's not his first skill. And he's like, the fence is still grounded. And I said, no, the fence is there. And what you do in an electric fence is you take a little piece of grass and you set it on the electric fence and you just slowly move towards it until you can feel your fingers vibrate. And you get within a couple inches and you'll feel it. A wet piece of grass will pass it faster. So you grab a new piece of grass and you set it down on the fence and you move closer until you feel your fingers vibrate. Because I used to turn my fences up pretty high so that they'd burn off the grass. Anyway, so my dad is sitting there going, and he goes, no, and he grabs onto the fence, like literally he just grabs onto that electric fence, and he says, it's still grounded because I can hold onto the fence. Now my dad was wearing tennis shoes, rubber tennis shoes. I was wearing work boots, which don't have rubber tennis shoes. And I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, the fence is not grounded. And I put my hand on his shoulder. we both took the charge. So anyway, it was a good fun moment, good fun family moment. Shock your dad with the electric fence. So anyway, you do have to pay attention to your shoes as well. Shoes will help you because they'll either stop the charge or continue it. Next question.
Moving on to Benjamin here on the panel again. San Carlos, any suggestions for queuing multi-spotlighting in Zoom? Zoom OSC only can spotlight one person in the current version.
The only thing I will say to remember is that both to the outside stream and to anybody on a web portal or anyone with an older version, they won't see the multi-spotlighting. So always know that your multi-spotlighting only works with if you will only work in that environment. You can now, I guess they made it more public that you can force people to, you now have a feature where you can force everybody to upgrade when they come into Zoom, to a specific version to make sure that they can see the multi-spotlighting and other features. So it's one of the things I have to go back. I had not turned it up recently. I've had the feature for a little while. And so I'm going to turn it up to the newest one to make sure, because we had people who didn't see the breakout rooms, for instance, this morning. And that was because they were in an older version. And by forcing them to do it on the way through, it'll avoid some confusion. So just know that. I don't think the OSC is going to do it. The multi Zoom is pretty complicated I don't think it'll do it, but nice background, by the way. I'm getting these. Yeah. Go ahead. Next question.
Moving on to Frank Haney of Ottawa for the second to the last question today. Audio Hijack supports sharing sessions. Is there any interest in an after-hours Discord where we could export and share sessions setups? Just select export from the sessions menu and save. You can then post it.
Yeah, we should do that. No, you go ahead, Sky.
That's what Jeffrey is doing in Kansas City. That Stream Sharks. He is doing Zoom Kitchen. And that's a lot of opportunity to practice kind of behind the scenes. And Guy's been helping support that as well. Thank you, Guy.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
And moving to the last one for today, Michael Fisk of Spokane Valley. I purchased the M1 Mac Mini. I'm considering adding a 2 terabyte SSD via a docking station. Will this likely eliminate the lag I get from my external spin drives?
Unless you're using a really fast RAID, your spinning drives are going to be painfully slow. Like I don't use spinning drives anymore, like for a whole bunch of reasons. But I mean, I have a bunch of them. I'm thinking of like selling them for. I've been trying to figure out the number, but I think it's going to be like $10 or like $10 a terabyte or something like that. I have all these portable drives, just like boxes and boxes of portable drives. And so I was just going to tell my neighbors that like, hey, you can just come here and pick them up and just give me $10 for that 1 terabyte, because it's drives like these, that are too slow for me to actually use anymore. So anyway, I'm gonna probably get rid of a bunch of them. I don't know what I'm gonna do with them yet. Or maybe I'll put them on
Once
eBay.
objects of lust now gone. It's amazing how many old technologies. I wanted that so badly.
Well, we used to buy them and we used to use them as delivery drives, but the issue is that we, as a delivery drive, we would always put our address and have people return them, not because we were cheap, but because in California we were we were concerned that it was a taxable event to send them not a taxable event on the drive, a taxable event on the entire production. There's different opinions about that, and so we didn't do that. Angela, what are you?
Ooh, Angela's light is awesome.
Whoa, look at that.
Is that carbon arc, Angela?
No, that's
no.
just.
Oh, it's just
she's
you've got it rewired
at 110.
That's an old keg light modified to take a regular base bulb.
The switch is plugged off on the other end, but yeah, it works. I changed it to 100 watts. And
awesome Fresnel lens.
Yeah, I love this thing.
That is amazing.
The old Bardwell McAllisters. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not a Mo Richardson. Okay.
That's great. And Angela, did you buy it rewired like that, or did you rewire it?
No, I did it. It's a pretty basic rewire. I can still play with the spot and flood.
Nice. And is that a hue light inside?
No, I mean I did this. I think I rewired it 10 years ago. So
that'd be the new level of geekiness is to put a programmable LED bulb into an old Fresnel housing. Just saying, be kind of slick. We
colored spotlights.
Yeah, John Pruitt
without gels.
There you go. See, guy is tempting you. Look at the.
Guys doing that old magic trick where you stick it in your mouth and it lights up.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking into the light. I got ideas now.
Yeah.
I'm into the light.
Yeah. Next question.
While Guy's holding
That's
that
it.
up,
Where
is that on the website?
Yeah, we're question free. We're done.
All right. Well, we only went an hour heavy.
My wife noticed.
I think my our cajoling people to think about questions and ahead of time is starting to sink in, and so our attendees are becoming more efficient. So now we're going to have to become more efficient at. I think a lot of it is we kind of go on these little, which are fun, but I think that we're now growing to a point where our attendees have become effective enough that as panelists, we're going to have to become more effective about being more succinct. We don't want to take away the quality of it, but we're going to have to be more focused because we used to get good at this of just kind of wandering around because we weren't getting enough questions, but now we have plenty of questions. So
on the other side, after 4 hours, we have 102 people still participating.
I know, exactly.
That's pretty amazing.
It's not that doesn't also account for the folks that are listening in Makana and the folks that are the 42 people that are also on that are still in YouTube. So there's closer to 150, 160 people still here. So it's
fun. Ones that'll listen a couple hours later, like I did.
Yeah.
We also had a lot more people voting up questions today than normal, I've noticed.
Yep.
Some questions got 12 votes, which was great. I think the rooms added to the participation of the show.
It did.
Okay, Angela and Benjamin and Peter, you realize you've shown up now. It's tradition. I'm sorry.
We're going to keep on trying to drag you in.
Anything done 3 times is tradition because the first time you do it, it's new. The second time, it's like, we did it that way last time. But the third time,
at least on the weekends, come join us. It's good. It's good to have all of you.
Thanksgiving break is really great, but it does end.
I know.
I'll see what I can do on Saturdays.
Very good. Very good.
Yep. I go back to work on Monday, so yeah. I'll try.
We'll at least join us for this weekend, and then the weekend we're here every day, so you can always come on the weekends, slow days, exactly. All right, so I will. We're going to set you all free. Have a great day. Sunday we're going to try the whole doing it after, not tomorrow because I need one day to do the announcement, so I'll put it in the announcement tomorrow. But on Sunday we'll do an extra. We will end Sunday on time, but then we'll break into breakout rooms again as a test of bookending the show with breakout rooms.
So I saved over $300 today because of the Black Friday sales.
There you go.
So while we were here, I spent money, but I saved tons.
You couldn't afford not to spend that money.
Exactly.
Alex, you say we're going to end on time now. Just wait till Sunday.
I know. We'll Sunday, yeah, exactly. We'll people are getting good at it again. Steve and then Courtney.
Yeah, I was just wondering, are you going to do breakout rooms tomorrow then?
No, we'll do breakout rooms before the show tomorrow and Sunday. The question, but what we'll add to Sunday is a breakout room at the end.
After.
to Benjamin's suggestion. We'll put one at the end and see how that goes. Stuart and then Courtney.
If we don't finish on time Sunday, I vote that Alex has to send us all a free hard drive because he's got all those ones to get rid of. Just send them out.
Yeah, exactly. Here, and you have a drive, and you have a drive, and you have a drive. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, those of us on the West Coast have a little trouble getting up at 4:30 to hit the 5 a.m. breakout room, so the one after would be appreciated. And the other question is, I didn't know about the breakout rooms. You had to sign up ahead of time. If I came in at 5:30, would it be possible to get in, or you have to be in?
You just have to sign up. You just have to sign. It's just the same, like register and then go through.
Okay, and you'll let people in from any time after 5 to 6. Or...
Yeah, in the meeting, it just goes in. Like you're immediately in the room. It's not. There's no raising hands or anything else.
You're logged in. Then.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Mr. Godin, that's the look outside my room at 5 a.m.
Yeah, see, there you go.
What it is now.
Going the other direction. All right. Everyone have a good day, morning, night, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right. Take care.